Do do do, theme song. Do do do, I'm broke so this is my theme song. Do do do, just imagine this is an awesome theme song. Do do, theme song. Left of the box. Hello, welcome to Left of the Box. Bonjour, bienvenue. I'm Sandy. Welcome, 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 Hunger Games 1989 and four other people. Three other people. I really need to have like a more set time that I do these so that people actually know when to tune in as opposed to just hoping this pops up in people's recommends. And do you know what would help with that? Is if you hit like, I think there's a notification button on my YouTube page. You could do that and then you would get notified when I'm going live, which would probably be very helpful considering that I'm pretty random as to when I do my live streams. Anyway, welcome and thank you for coming out. I know, again, this is an odd time. I normally during the week start at 6, but I have some things that I want to get done later this evening, so I don't want this to be a terribly long live stream. But there was just a few stories over the past few days that I'm like, wow, okay, I need to cover these. Like, again, when I first started this channel, I'm like, oh, is there going to be enough Canadian news for me to cover on a regular basis? And it's like, yeah, I could do a daily show and still not be able to cover everything that I want to cover. Because there is so much going on. And the thing is that a lot of people like to think, oh, it's boring. It's nothing interesting. You know, it's just Canadian politics. Ooh. But when you start actually paying attention to Canadian politics, you find it's very dynamic. You know, very upsetting, for one thing. There's a lot of things to be upset about. But there's so much that happens in this country that just kind of slips under the radar. And attitudes that are being built here. And yeah, like I said, I'm kind of blown away that there's so much for me to cover. And I didn't want to wait a few more days to do a live stream because who knows what's going to happen between now and then that I'm going to be like, oh, I need to cover that. Even though that book thing that I'm involved with, the book derby thing that I haven't talked much about lately because I had some negative feedback with it. Anyway, the publishing date is coming up like soon. Like this weekend, for us to get it up online. So over the next few days, that's going to be my focus, is doing a read through of my book to make sure that, you know, all the, like literally all the periods and words are correct and stuff. And doing like one final read through before I post it. And then I'll just forget about it until the derby's over, and I'll have to see how I feel about it depending on the feedback I get, you know, because like the book I've been working on has been my escape. Like I've read it over and over again and I'm not tired of it. You know, I find it very interesting and I love just kind of visiting this world that I've made for this book. But the feedback that I got from the beta reader was just so devastating that I'm like, I'm conflicted as to when it becomes available that I can tell people what it is, if I should, because I don't want people who know me to read it and then feel awkward because they have nothing good to say about it type thing. So I'll have to put more thought into it. Also, welcome, Hermit Horologist. Glad to see that you're in the Sandbox. Let's see. Hunger Games 1989, a whole lot of shit is going to go down in a few days because it always does, yes. And yeah, I could do this every day and still have stuff to cover, still stuff that I want to cover. And, you know, luckily there's other Canadian content creators that I'm coming across that tend to do the deeper dives on the stories. And I feel like my live streams I'm an aggregate. Like I collect all these different news sources and then give my commentary and my feedback on it. But I don't personally necessarily like do the digging for the information. I leave that up to other wonderful people to do. Whereas if I were doing my own like video essay on certain subjects, then I would be doing my own detailed deep dives into it. So this is definitely like doing these live streams is definitely a different vibe than when I was doing my essays, but I still want to do essays, but not necessarily on news related items, more like on the social issues and things that I'm more passionate about in those areas. So I still plan on doing that, but until this book is out and I no longer have to think about it, um, I'm not going to be able to focus on much else. Oh, but for people who are already in the sandbox, I want to show you something that I stumbled over while I was on YouTube. You see, my brain works in weird ways. I know, shocking. Um, where sometimes I'll be searching for information, doing digs. Like when I get really hyper focused on trying to find something, I can spend hours and hours and hours. But then suddenly I'll just I'll feel like that I can't go any further with it, that there's nothing else to find. And then suddenly, randomly, months later, I'll be sitting down thinking, did I try this search term for it? And I'll try again. And then suddenly something will pop up. And I'm like, oh, wow, okay. And that happened recently because Sam Cedar from the Majority Report, yes, we gotta get our Majority Report quota talking in. Way back when he did a sitcom called The Show, which is such a pain in the ass to Google because everything with the words the show in it will pop up, and that's a lot of stuff. And so you have to be more specific and on and on and on. And so I've been very interested. Like I want to see this sitcom from like the mid 90s and see how well it's held up and all this sort of stuff. But since it only had like a handful of episodes, it didn't even have a full season or anything like that. And it was the mid 90s, like well before the internet age. It's not like you can just find it on YouTube or find it on, other sites where you might go to find TV shows and stuff like that um, that collect the TV shows for people to watch. Like it's really difficult because it wasn't digitized back then, So it's really difficult to find things, but every now and then on YouTube you can find a commercial about the show. Well, like I said, recently I had a thought in my head and I'm like, why don't I try this search term? And you wouldn't believe what I found. Let me, um, okay, that doesn't look so well on that screen. I'll have to go to this screen. This here is the full episode of the first episode. I haven't been able to find any of the other episodes, but this is the full episode. There's right there. It's the full first episode, and I watched it, and I'm like, wow, okay, yeah, it was a thing, and especially given the nature of what the show was about. Like he's the white writer on an all black entertainment show and stuff like that, and just seeing the tropes play out and everything, it's kind of interesting. So people can go and watch it. I don't know how much I can watch on this. Like I don't know what the copyright would be on this on something this old, but it's just some of the things that they do. It's just so. I can't say it necessarily held up all that well. Look at the phone in his hand. It looks like a shoe. Like a full shoe. So you can find this full episode of the first episode of the show. It's not the pilot, so the pilot would technically come before this. And it's on a YouTube channel called Rare Gems. You can see that right there. Rare Gems, and then you would search for the show dash Deandra and them to find this. But it's definitely an interesting watch. I tried to tweet it at him, but he's barely on Twitter much. So I don't know if he actually saw that this exists. Hunger Games 1989. Does it make sense why it didn't have a full season? Well, it's hard to make that judgment now because we're looking at it through the lens of now and what culture is now. So you'd have to go back and be in the head frame, the headspace of where people would have been in the mid 1990s in order to figure out like if this is something that would be appealing. Like it's very challenging because I think for a lot of people, there's a lot of episodes, a lot of series that if we were to go back right now and be like, oh no, if we were around back then, that series would have never taken off and all this sort of stuff. Because we're thinking it through the lens of today. So like there were definitely, like it's a sitcom, so things are going to get played up even more. But, and it's hard to say why it didn't get picked up back then, if the audience maybe didn't like the idea of it. Maybe it was because it was a show, basically about the racial dynamics, between white and black people in the mid 90s. It could have just been because it's like the CRT thing way back when that it didn't get picked up. It's hard to say. Like I didn't see anything too blaring that I can think of, but then again, I'm not exactly the type of person that would know. um, yeah, so it's interesting, and I recommend that people just kind of go and watch it. Like I find the premise of the sitcom interesting, which is actually why I want to see the whole thing, see all the episodes, because I find the premise of it interesting. And it'd be interesting to do like a reboot of it now, where, again, you have like white writers on all black shows, but it's a comedy, and you see like the behind the scenes negotiatings and things of that sort. And the thing is that it probably does happen. It wouldn't surprise me in the least that a lot of shows that we watch and love even now, that are about women or about queer folks and stuff, the writing staff is anything but sometimes. And sometimes that's valuable because the writers are writing to what they feel will sell, as opposed to we're making a statement on blank. So you won't necessarily get the social commentary you're hoping for from a lot of these shows because, again, they don't care about the social commentary. They care about, what will get the views. And there's always, like, again, if we could go back in time, there's a lot of series too where it's like, if they had just held on a little longer, I think they would have really taken off or something. So it's hard to go back in time to determine like what TV show should or shouldn't have made it. Because there's a lot of stuff that I'm like, I can't imagine how that was ever made. Like it was just the whole premise of it or something was so offensive. Or even just, some of the sitcoms that were like wildly popular back in the 90s. Like you have Seinfeld, and I've tried watching some of it, and I've never been able to stand it. And that's primarily because none of the main characters are pleasant people. When it comes down to it, same with Sex and the City, because you had the main character, Carrie, who really just was not a good person. And so when you have shows that are focusing on people that aren't good people. Like, they aren't people that you can relate to. They aren't endearing in any way. It's hard to actually get into that series. And I felt that, with Sex and the City, the main character, I disliked her so much. Seinfeld, like, I didn't like any of the main characters. Even going back to like Friends or something like that, I didn't like any of the characters. Like, they weren't nice people necessarily. So it's hard for me to get into a series where it's like none of them are likable people, but for some reason it sold. It sold big. So I'm probably not the target audience for a lot of sitcoms. But then again, I've never really watched a lot of sitcoms. BCat K has joined the Sandbox. I am feeling a lot better. Thank you. I still get coughing fits, but I think I'm recovered. It's just a lingering cough. So it's, yeah. Eventually, hopefully it will go away and I don't wake up in the middle of the night coughing. That would be nice. And BCats K saying they're all terrible people, probably talking about the sitcoms I was talking about. Mo's Art, The Sopranos, they're all monsters. Well, there's a difference between The Sopranos and, Seinfeld, Friends, and Sex and the City, and that is the genre. So you can have a whole bunch of terrible people in more drama angled shows and it still be a watchable show, because usually they do a better job of showing characters dynamics, and they get more into personalities and justifications for that. Like, a prime example is the series Rome. It only made it 2 seasons, but I loved it. I loved it so much, even though a lot of the main characters that you love in it are monsters. They are monsters. You know, but part of the reason why I liked Rome, especially when it was going up against Game of Thrones, was in Rome, it was all real. Like, they weren't using dragons or magic or like all this sort of stuff. Like, there was a belief in some magical things, but there was no magic or wizards or witches or dragons or mythical creatures of any sort. It was very, very human. And to me, that's part of the reason why that series was so appealing to me, because it was just showing, what humanity can be if left unchecked. So I really liked that show. It didn't rely, like, again, it didn't rely on dragons and all that sort of stuff. It was just raw humanity. And that's why I liked it, even though you're rooting for some of the characters, and those characters are monsters. Like, just the worst of the worst. Mozart saying Rome is like my favorite show. Yeah, I haven't watched it in a long time. I have it on box set and I might want to rewatch it. But I'm glad that they, as much as I would have loved to see it go on, I'm glad, like, I understand the reasoning for why they ended it after only 2 seasons. And that was, they didn't want it to linger. They didn't want it to go on and become a series where people are left like, oh, so after season 2, they really turned into a piece of shit. They wanted it to kind of end on a stronger note. So as opposed to just trying to find filler things in there and stuff. So that's, I can understand and I appreciate it. And then it's also nice because it's easy to get caught up on if you're interested in watching it, because it's only 2 seasons long. And I kind of want to watch it again now that I've been talking about it. Rewatch it. Mozart saying, I want a show about ancient China like Rome. Yeah, there's so many shows that I would love that just kind of give like cultural feelings from around the world in different times. Because sadly, that's how a lot of people get their education on the world and whatnot. And that's part of the reason why, again, I've kind of promoted the idea that we need more entertainment media geared towards Canadian history and like accurate Canadian history, because there's so many TV shows and movies and references in American entertainment media about their history and stuff, and movies about the Civil Wars and all this sort of stuff, but we don't have that here in Canada. And sadly, it is a good way to educate people, and I wish there was more of that. And more about other areas of the world too, because it's interesting. I like learning, so for me it's interesting. Hello, MIDI Doctors. Hello, Soul Life. I'm not sure where Goth Dogs is these days. That's the thing. Sometimes I'll see people come and go, but I don't have any of their contact information, because a lot of people I would actually like to check in on and say hi. And just see if they're all right, you know? But MIDI Doctors, you might appreciate this. I don't know if you watched from the beginning to get caught up, but I found this while randomly searching stuff on YouTube. This is the full episode of the first episode of the show on YouTube. And that is a very young Sam Cedar right there. And it is a very interesting cultural backtrack to see what things are like. And like I said, I did try to tweet it out to him, but I don't know how much he's on Twitter, so. Yeah. MIDI Doctors, is Shogun a remake of the 1980s Richard Chamberlain one? I'm not entirely sure. I know it won a whole bunch of awards at the Emmys, so I am very curious to seeing it. Soul Life, it's not the pilot, it's the first episode. It's called Deandra and Them. But I just was randomly able to find that on YouTube when I was, in the bowels of YouTube searching stuff. Here, I'll just move it back so you guys can see. I know it takes a little bit of time sometimes for my stream to populate, so. Look at that phone. Oh. Yeah. But yeah, it's 22 minutes long. It's the full episode. And very young Sam. Oh, right. I could post the link. Thank you, MIDI Doctors. I forget that I have that ability on here as, being the owner of the channel. I can post links. There you go. I just posted a link to it in the Sandbox, so you guys can check it out later on. I don't think there'd be any harm in just watching a little bit of it. Let's see. Where would be an interesting point to watch it? So I guess here, this is the main character. His girlfriend just broke up with him, and he wants the writing staff of this entertainment show to tell him how he can win her back.
Oh, she'll be back with a whole new attitude, bruh.
She'll be back with a restraining order. Now go stand in the corner, Stalky.
Wilson, I gotta tell you, I think no matter what the
Talking sunflowers.
There we go.
Wilson, you're asking comedy writers for romantic advice. That's like asking Charlie Manson to coach you on your parole hearing.
I'm desperate, I know that. But you're all I got. Now here's what I'm doing. I sent her a $1,000 bouquet with some of them mechanical talking sunflowers that I can program to say whatever I want. So what do I want? Denise?
Talking sunflowers. For people who weren't around in the 90s, that was a thing.
Talking sunflowers. Okay, I got it. Deandra,
We are the talking sunflowers from the planet Zurkon. If you do not reunite with Wilson, Earth, as you know it, will cease to exist.
You pretty glib for somebody whose contract runs out in 2 weeks.
No, have him say, Deandra. Wilson's eyes are everywhere. Birds of the field, fish of the sea, flowers of the garden. So you watch your step. Oh, she'll be back with a whole new attitude, bruh.
She'll be back with a restraining order. Now go stand in the corner, Stalky.
Wilson, I gotta tell you, I think no matter what the talking sunflowers say, it's gonna sound kind of creepy.
Y'all getting a little too free with your criticism of old Wilson. Let me remind y'all something. This the Wilson Lee show. It ain't the Denise, Devon, Trent, Tom, and white guy whose name I don't know show. It's the Wilson Lee show. Why don't you say that one time?
Wilson Lee Show.
Wilson Lee show.
Good. Now bump the sunflowers, because that idea is whack. White guy, help a brother out.
Anyway, I don't want to watch too much of this, otherwise we will probably just get caught up in it. And again, I don't know what kind of copyright issues I might get with it. Like, I doubt Sam would, but sometimes channels are weird about that sort of thing. Anyway, it's there for everyone to watch. It'd be nice to get Sam to see it again. But I've only been able to find the one episode, but it is there. And I've tried the channel itself, the Rare Gems YouTube channel doesn't have the rest of them, unfortunately. So yeah, there's that. Anyway, I should probably like do a total tone shift now and get into some of the news I was planning on covering, because I've been talking for like a half hour already and haven't even hit the Canadian news that I wanted to get to. And now I'm kind of hesitant to start with the story I wanted to start with, because the story I wanted to start with is really bad. So I might want to start with a different story. They're also really bad. Yeah. Lots of interesting things happening in Canadian media these days. Okay, well, why don't I'll let you guys choose. So, no, that's weird too. I don't know. This is when I need like a producer or a co-host to be like, we should do number 13. Or how about 17? Let's do 17 in the docket or something. Because I'm there's a lot going on in my life right now, so I'm like super duper stressed. And so when that happens, I tend to get a little bit more scatterbrained. Well, actually, let's start with a lot of Jagmeet Singh stuff. And then we can get into some of the really bad stuff, and then the other bad but not horrific but really bad. Oh, am I ever selling it? MIDI doctors, different times when pagers were pagers and not bombs. Yeah, I was thinking about that when I was talking to you guys about this episode, because they do mention things like pagers in it, and it's like, yeah. And that's actually one of the stories that I wanted to touch on in the show tonight. Okay, well, why don't we start with some stuff about a by-election that happened. So I kind of touched on it last live stream, because one of the candidates for the NDP in Montreal, Craig, oh man, what's his last name? Suave or something like that. I don't know how to say his name. It will come up in the video. Had a pamphlet out with the Palestinian flag on it, and it was just causing a lot of Zionists to get super upset that here's this candidate in an election, you know, promoting the Palestinian flag, and even though a lot of those same people are more than happy to, you know, have publicity shots with Israeli flags. Well, there were apparently 2 by-elections held on the same day. And in them, the Liberals lost both. Now, one of the ridings that wasn't expected that they would win, but the riding in Montreal, the really contested one, that was a Liberal stronghold that they now lost to the Bloc Québécois, the separatist party of Canada, which is not a good sign. Now, something I also said when I was doing that is I don't generally pay too much attention to by-elections because, you know, they're just one-offs, and we're not in the situation here in Canada right now anyway, where we're on like a razor edge as to who has control over the parliament. You know, is it going to be Conservatives or the Liberals? Because a lot more seats would have to turn before it's like, okay, we just have like one or two deciding votes. So because of that, I don't tend to pay too much attention to the by-elections, but I came across another Canadian content creator, and he does video essays, and I think he's from Manitoba. Don't quote me on that. And, you know, he has a decent sized channel, and he does some collaborations with some very interesting people and stuff. And he had a wonderful breakdown of these two by-elections. And so I figured we could watch his video, do a lot of what, you know, the serfs do, Lance at the Serfs, where we watch other content creators. But this is also my way of saying, you know, people should probably check him out too. Because the more that I get involved with Canadian politics online, the more I realize that a lot of what we are looking for is already there. It's just, it's so hard for us small Canadian podcasters or content creators to break through the algorithms. And it's so hard for, especially if we're on the left, for something to really pick up steam where everyone can be like, oh yeah, there's this channel that everyone can go to. Especially when it's very individualized. So like with me, it's just, you know, I do Left of the Box. So my content tends to be skewed towards things that I like versus, you know, Lance. He does stuff that skews towards what he likes. David Dole skews towards stuff that he likes, but we have no show that it's kind of like a Canadian national show. Like I try my best to cover stuff from across the country, but I'm just one person. It's very difficult for me to do that. But if I had like a team or something of that sort in a daily show and a co-host and a producer, then that's something I probably could do. But until then, you know, it's very fragmented, all of us Canadian content creators. So I came across this Canadian content creator, and he's quite good. You know, his channel is doing quite well. And again, it just kind of surprises me that suddenly I'll stumble over these channels where it's like, how had I not heard about them before? Because his channel's larger than mine by a fair bit. And he makes, you know, good quality stuff. So it's like, how have I not heard about these content creators before? Especially when this is what I look for on YouTube. And again, that's the algorithms. Is not showing us what we want unless every now and then a random thing gets thrown at you and you take a look. We don't get promoted the same way as right-wing content does because, you know, it's not as clickbaity. This person's name is Steve Boots, and he had a wonderful breakdown of the by-elections. And he was able to keep it nice and concise in a video just under 6 minutes. So let's take a peek at that.
Are in enormous trouble. Literally, the federal Liberals are in enormous trouble. Literally every trend for them is moving in the wrong direction. And if things don't change, they are going to get destroyed in next year's election. And we've gotten very strong indicators of that in the two by-election results from last night. So we're going to talk about last night's results, the larger trends, and what the Liberals need to do next. Because they need to do something to right this ship or it's going to sink. And I want to...
From what I've seen of his content so far, he tends to be, I don't know for sure, but closer to the center than I am, but still on the left. So more what we would normally traditionally think of what liberals used to be, I think is where he would be. So he's to the left of the Liberal Party, but probably to the right of me, if that makes sense.
I want to be really clear here. Normally, you don't want to overinterpret by-election results. But once clear trends start to emerge, I think it's time to have a conversation. So let's look at the 2 elections from last night. First up, Elmwood Transcona. So this
Hermit horologist, I was going to say he's from Saskatchewan. I think, while we're listening to this, I'll check him on Twitter to see. I think it has a location there.
is a weird riding because it was held by Bill Blakey for 20 years, then it was held by another NDP MP for 3 years, and Conservative from 2011 to 2015. Then it went back to a different Blakey, his son, Daniel, and he held the seat for another 9 years before he stepped away to work with Wab Kinew. So historically, it's been a very strong NDP seat, but it's a little confused by the fact that it's also just a strong Blakey seat. So this was a pretty hotly contested by-election. Like, the Conservatives thought they could take this seat, and the Conservatives have been able to bring elections close in this riding before. In 2011, they won by 61 votes, and they came close. It wound up being about 48% to 44%, but the NDP managed to hold the seat. And worth noting that the Liberals lost almost 10% of their vote share in the riding. Not a great sign. So the NDP holding this riding doesn't move the needle a ton because it's historically been a pretty strong riding for them. If they had lost this riding, that would have been extremely noteworthy and very bad news for Jagmeet Singh. So,
yeah, he's from Saskatchewan, according to Twitter. And part of the reason why I like his analysis of this, like, particular trends is that he's going to get into a whole bunch of by-elections that have happened recently and go just a little under the surface to kind of show the bigger overall trend, which I really appreciate.
the effect of this is likely just buying Singh a little bit of time and a little bit of patience. Losing the seat would have been a catastrophe, so this is really more of a defensive hold. The other by-election that happened Monday was the LaSalle-Aymard-Verdun by-election in Montreal, and this one went to the Bloc Québécois. So a little bit of context on this seat, it has historically been a very strong Liberal riding. So this riding was originally created in 2015, and it's been held by David Lametti ever since. He stepped down, and that's what forced this by-election. So before this riding was formed, it was mostly in LaSalle-Aymard, which was Paul Martin's riding for the Liberals for 23 years. And this wound up being a very narrow win for the Bloc. They won by about 250 votes, less than a % vote difference. And all three.
I did see some of the numbers coming in the night of the election, and it was so close. Especially when voter turnout tends to be lower in by-elections, which is not shocking. Like, I think all of these, the two by-elections that just happened, it was under 40% turnout. And when the turnout is so low, the margin is so narrow. And this is really where it gets down to every vote matters in those situations, because, you know, we're talking about a handful of votes and it could have been swung to a different candidate. And in some of the information that I was looking at, some people were upset with these long ballot initiatives where people are just like flooding the ballots with like all these kind of fake parties that don't really mean anything to just make it really long and obnoxious and stuff. And, you know, in an election like this, that actually could have an influence. But a lot of people are just looking for someone to blame. So then they can say, well, it's this long vote initiative that caused, you know, the Bloc Québécois to win, because if they weren't there, then maybe the NDP or the Liberals would have gotten enough votes to win. But what they don't tend to realize is a lot of those people who voted for those one-off candidates or stuff, the long ballot initiative, they wouldn't have voted, most likely, for anyone else. They were basically participating in with that long ballot initiative, and I don't think it would have had an impact on, you know, the Bloc getting in or the Liberals getting in, because I'm pretty sure they simply wouldn't have voted.
Three parties were clustered together very close here. So for the NDP, this is a bit of a disappointment. They were pushing Craig Sauvé pretty hard, and they were really hoping to steal this seat. Third place really isn't the result they were hoping for, but the vote numbers are pretty strong. But I think it's worth noting they thought this was a winnable riding. Jagmeet Singh was campaigning hard here. For the Liberals, they really needed this hold, and they wound up dropping over 15% of the vote. And their candidate, Laura Palestini, didn't even stick around after she lost. Just watch this clip.
We're all trying to figure out why Laura Palestini gave that speech when she gave that speech. You got any insight? What's the vibe and the reaction at the headquarters after that?
Well, David, I could tell you one thing. As much as she was energetic in her speech, she was also energetic in leaving the party. She immediately left as soon as she gave that speech. She did a few steps saying thank you to the volunteers, turned around, went out the door, and of course we followed her. Thought maybe she was just getting some fresh air. No, she got drove away.
Yeah, this didn't go well. And the Conservatives had a decent showing. They picked up about a 4% vote share, but that's not going to be enough in Quebec for them. But for the Liberals, this is bad. This is 5 consecutive by-election losses. A trend is becoming very clear. This is 7 consecutive by-elections where they've dropped vote share. Like, if I am the Liberals, I am hitting the panic button. They lost Toronto St. Paul's to the Conservatives and dropped nearly 9% of the vote share. They lost to Jamil Javani in Durham. They weren't expected to win, but they did drop vote share again, 7.5%. Same with Calgary Heritage. They were never really a serious threat. They only got 14% of the vote, but they dropped 2.5% of the vote share. The trend.
You see, that's the important thing to also pay attention to, is even though they never had a chance of winning said riding, to kind of point out and show that the people turning out for the Liberals has dropped down drastically. So, like, ideally, even if there's no chance of them winning, you'd like to see that the vote share has gone up a bit, that they're energizing the base, that maybe there's this thought that this time we can do it and all that sort of stuff. But what this is showing is that there's a severe lack of enthusiasm among Liberal voters. And this could also be an indication of how many people vote Liberal just in hopes of getting the Liberals in as opposed to the Conservatives, the whole strategic voting thing. And this could be showing that people have stopped caring about that as much as well, because they're like, what difference does it make? And as I've said plenty of times on this channel, I'm not a fan of Justin Trudeau. I'm not a fan of the Liberals, but I'd much, much rather have them in than the Conservatives, especially under Pierre Poilievre.
And is clear. They've dropped votes in 7 consecutive by-elections. They're going to get wiped out in the next election if they don't do something. And after the loss, all Trudeau really had to offer is a shrug. He congratulated the candidates and said that Canadians need to realize what's at stake. Just watch this clip.
In English, your reaction to the results last night?
Well, first of all, I want to congratulate everyone who stepped up in putting their name on a ballot at a time where we know politics is a challenging moment. I also want to highlight the thousands upon thousands of volunteers who stepped out, lots for our party, but lots for other parties as well, to show that people are still very much engaged. At the same time, we need people to be more engaged. We need people to understand what's at stake in this upcoming election. Obviously, it would have been nicer to be able to win and hold Verdun, but there's more work to do, and we're going to stay focused on doing it.
What do you think went wrong?
Oh, I think there's all sorts of reflections to take on that, but the big thing is to make sure that Canadians understand that the choice they get to make in the next election about the kind of country we are really matters, and that's the work we're going to continue to do.
What does that?
So if Justin Trudeau really feels like, Canadians need to choose, and it's then what is he doing to encourage Canadians to think about that, to encourage Canadians to vote for the Liberals, or to show how different the Liberals are from the Conservatives? He's the figurehead of the Liberals. That's kind of his job. But it's just this overwhelming, meh, we lost. Oh well, next time. And the most recent information I've seen about him is he's still intending to be the leader, but if the Liberals want any chance of winning, he needs to step down. And then even if he steps down, that's still not a guarantee they're going to win over the Conservatives.
Of country we are really matters, and that's the work we're going to continue to do.
What does that even mean? All he's got is Poilievre bad, I guess? Justin Trudeau, if you do not realize that your time is up, you are dooming your party to irrelevance. They're already basically dead at the provincial level in most provinces. And if he doesn't step away, we may wind up with a Conservative majority bloc opposition. Trudeau says that Canadians need to realize what's at stake. Maybe he does. He needs to get out of the way and give the Liberals time to run a proper leadership race to set a new agenda and reset the narrative. Because right now they're going to get crushed. This party is going to shuffle its way into irrelevance, and if they don't make a change, they'll deserve it. Take care of yourselves, folks.
Yeah, that idea of a conservative majority with a bloc opposition is kind of because the Bloc Québécois has been the official opposition before, and they are a separatist party, and I could only imagine what it would be like to have them in with the Conservatives in a majority and the Bloc being like, so we want to separate from the rest of Canada, and the Conservatives are like, yeah, piss off, go. It's just not good, not good. Now, Jagmeet Singh had something to say about this, and this got me worried. It did. So in my last, I don't know if it was the last live stream or the stream before that, I was also pointing out how Pierre Poilievre was constantly mispronouncing Jagmeet's name, because he was doing a press conference saying Jagmeet, Jagmeet, Jagmeet. And it's a very annoying thing that conservatives do to, you know, show a lot of disrespect for their colleagues. And I just, you know, to let you know, like, Pierre knows how to say his name. It's literally in Jagmeet's bio. Pronounce jug, rhymes with hug, meet. Pierre knows how to say his name, but he's choosing to disrespect him when he purposely mispronounces it. Because it's not even, like, this isn't even a name that can be, like, it's trippy up. Like, the only time I get tripped up is when I see it printed, because, you know, the way it's printed, it seems like it would be pronounced a different way. But it's not a challenging name to say. So Jagmeet is saying last night's results showed that our movement is gaining momentum. These by-election results are a call to action. We need you. We need everyone who opposes deep conservative cuts to join us, to work together to fight the future of the middle class. Now, I'm concerned with this because the results show that our movement is gaining. No, that was already an NDP stronghold. You know, you didn't win a new seat. You won back an old seat. That's it. And I'm worried that this is making him too confident, especially when we get into the next story about how he was dealing with the harassment. And now there's so many people that are kind of like giving him props for it and all this sort of stuff. And I say this because as a leader, he's been very disappointing on a whole. And if the NDP really wants to have gains, and I would really like to see them have gains, it's not going to be under Jagmeet. It's not. But I'm worried that this is basically going to get to his head and that he thinks that he'll be able to, you know, get some gains in the next election and stuff. But no, like, he's not doing a good enough job competing with the conservatives. The conservatives are convincing people that they're for the working class, that they're the ones that are doing it. And that used to be what the NDP was, you know. And especially because we're going to be getting into the story about the BC NDP and what they're doing. When you have provincial NDPs, premiers, doing things that are conservative-esque, that's a problem. Like, it's always been a problem when the NDP has decided to move more to the center to try to win over voters, which is never the case because the voters that those policies appeal to will vote for the parties that have been championing them all along, whether it be a liberal policy or a conservative policy. The NDP, you know, moving to the center isn't going to win over any new voters. The way that they're going to win over new voters is by being bold progressives, you know, because strip away all the party affiliations and things of that sort. The majority of Canadians agree on the majority of issues. And if you make it about policy and leave out the left-right language, I think that could be appealing to a lot of people. Don't say that this is about a leftist perspective or anything. Just be like, this is what this would do for the average person, and make it clear it doesn't matter what political leaning you are, that this would help. But that's not what they're doing. And so they're probably going to end up losing seats as well in the next election. There's still people out there saying that, oh yeah, once Pierre Poilievre gets out in front of people, everyone's going to see how much of a ding dong he is, and nobody's going to vote for him. It's like, that's not the case, because they're not voting for Pierre Poilievre. They're voting for his right-wing rhetoric. They don't care how he presents it. So I'm very nervous about the next federal election here in Canada. Just going to check the Sandbox quickly before we get into the next stuff. Yes, hermit horologist. Steve Boots is also a teacher. BKK, why pronounce it correctly when he can be racist? Yeah. So life racism isn't easier. It's exhausting. They appeal to the team sports politics voter. Try to. Yeah. But welcome, everyone, for popping into the Sandbox and stuff. And maybe at the end of this, I'll give everyone a little treat again, and we'll watch their segment of The Show with Sam Cedar from 1996. I found a full episode of it on YouTube, which is just kind of hilarious. So at the end of this live stream, to kind of unwind, we'll maybe watch another segment from it. So life, they should ban parties, make everyone vote on policy. That would be nice. That's what our municipal elections look like, because parties don't run municipally, it's individuals. And a lot of those individuals will often have ties and stuff to different political parties, but it is about policies and things of that sort. So I have a couple videos about this next subject, and I'm kind of conflicted because I don't want to just be like, so here's a story and we're going to watch somebody else's video about it and it's such a great detailed analysis, but it is a really good detailed analysis from David Dole. Like, he found all the information and everything and has presented it in a nice little bundle that's only 7 minutes long. It's like, yeah, okay. It makes it very difficult for me to not use it. So we'll go over it. I'll decide if I'm going to skip over parts, but David, he does such amazing work. He really does. Like, I have no idea how he's able to just like dig through all this information in such a short amount of time to put this all together. It's like, ooh, this news broke an hour ago. And then it's like, okay, so in 20 minutes, probably you'll see the video from David Dole about it. Because he's just really, really good at what he does. And so people might have seen it on Twitter, because this might have actually broken out of the Canadian Twitter sphere because of what happened. And that was Jagmeet Singh was going into Parliament, and he was getting harassed by somebody. And instead of just continuing on to Parliament, he turned around and was like, bro, what? And the reaction of the right-winger harassing him is beautiful. It's beautiful. The whole like, I don't see anything. No. So why don't we get into it then? And just so people know, I want to watch David's video for the information dump, but there's another video I want to get into about what you would actually see in Canadian press, like how they comment on it, and just some of my frustrations with how Canadian media portrays stories like this. So.
You sure it's not you? No, 100%. You're a coward. You're not gonna say it's my word. You sure it's not you? No, 100%. You're a coward. You're not gonna say it's my face.
This incredible clip is now going viral as NDP leader Jagmeet Singh confronted a right-wing agitator after he yelled something at him. And the right-winger was clearly very afraid of admitting that it was him. So I'm going to play this video for you and then give you a little more background into who this person is, like the group they come from, as well as the fact that a conservative MP has actually been meeting with this insane group. And I'll also get to Jagmeet Singh's response to all of the attention on this clip. But check this out.
Corrupted bastard. Okay, you want to say something? What? You want to say something? You say nothing? What does it mean? That? You got something to say?
I didn't say corrupted bastard, but I
Is that
said...
what you said?
No, I did not say that.
Who said it?
Somebody behind me said that.
Was it me? Was it you? No. You sure?
I love that, just being like, yeah, like, look at me, look, was it you? Was it you? It was him, like, we all heard it. It was absolutely him, but it was like, no, you get your fucking face out of that phone and look at me. And this guy, one of his aides, just standing by and be like, oh yeah, that's my boss there,
It was me, I'd admit it, buddy. Was it you or not? If it was me, I'd admit it. What'd you say then? I didn't say nothing. It wasn't me. It was a gentleman behind me, I guess. Who is it then? Point it out. I have no idea who it was, buddy. My word. You sure it's not you? No, 100%. You're a coward. You're not gonna say it's my face. That's what's thought. Say what? If I said something like that to you, I'd admit it. All right.
Now, I asked you if confidence was...
Like, that is just so brazen. Like, did he not know other people were recording this? Because he's like, oh no, if I said it, I would have admitted it. When that's exactly what he did not do.
Okay.
That was incredible. He would not admit that he clearly did the thing that he did. So to be clear there, he called Singh a corrupted bastard. And once Singh confronted him about it, he would not admit it. Now, before I say anything else, I want to acknowledge here that this individual is wearing a Toronto Maple Leafs hat. I, as a fan of the Toronto Maple Leafs, denounce this individual personality to the greatest team he represents us. Anyways, to get to the important part here, though. So, watch when Jagmeet Singh first comes up. This guy's on his phone. Like, oh, what? I'm not doing anything. I'm just looking down.
I just want to skip to more of the information dump. I think there.
That this individual comes from. All credit here to Luc Lebrun, who has been breaking this down from our Press Progress. So this article is from last year. What is the Save the Children convoy, and what do they really believe? So Canada's latest convoy mixes anti-LGBTQ plus paranoia, far-right conspiracies, sovereign citizen pseudo-legal beliefs, and new age spirituality. In other words, complete lunatics. So this individual is apparently part of this group, as well as was at this event with this guy right here, who's a conservative MP, a current sitting MP, Michael Cooper, parties with far-right group that mobbed MPs, disrupted Terry Fox ceremony. So this is around the same time this is all happening.
Okay, so for all my non-Canadian viewers here, Terry Fox, that's significance here. So the Terry Fox ceremony. Terry Fox is a well-known figure in Canadian history. He had cancer, and he was trying to fundraise for cancer by running across the country, and he had already lost a leg to cancer. And while he was doing that fundraiser for cancer, he actually passed away. And he's very kind of revered in this country, and there's statues and ceremonies and stuff like that. So for people to disrupt a Terry Fox ceremony, especially like conservatives that are always about like the values and stuff, like it's pretty low. Because again, this is somebody who died trying to raise awareness about cancer, and they're disrupting a ceremony about him. Like, as far as like he's not a politician, you know, with this dark history of colonialism or anything like that. He was trying to save lives. Like, that was a good guy there. And to disrespect him, that's, you know, coming from conservatives who are always about, you know, our symbols and stuff like that, it's pretty gross.
And this is Polyev, so the conservative leader, his shadow minister for democratic reform. This guy who is meeting with these right-wing lunatics is the shadow minister for democratic reform. Insane.
Now, there's a little bit more to come out about this Michael Cooper, MP Michael Cooper. Like literally even just today, because these stories are ongoing. And so this is from PEI Political Discussion, and we're just going to watch like the first 30 seconds of it. So I believe... So from the looks of it, he was kicked off the Justice Committee, but he's still a sitting member of the Conservative Caucus.
Controversial Conservative MP Michael Cooper has been kicked off the House of Commons Justice Committee following his angry confrontation with a Muslim.
So it was just mentioned in David's video about the committee, but he's been kicked off that committee.
Witness Cooper read from the manifesto of the suspected Christchurch mosque shooter after telling the witness he should be ashamed for linking mass murder to conservative commentators. Party leader Andrew Scheer addressed the expulsion on Twitter Saturday, saying it was due to the insensitive and unacceptable comments made by Cooper. Scheer continued saying he accepted Cooper's apology and he considers the matter now to be closed.
Yeah, so he was harassing a Muslim witness by quoting the manifesto from the Christchurch shooter. Is it surprising he'd be at a party with a bunch of right-wingers? But also there's this that just came out like literally right before I was about to do the live stream. I came across this. And so David Mosscrop is following up saying, well, let's read the statement first. So this is a statement from Michael Cooper. NDP Liberals and their media friends are spreading lies about me. See my statement. That's not much of a statement. So statement from MP Michael Cooper. Since the Liberals are lying to the media about me to distract from their failed government and costly policies, here is what happened with the photos being posted of me on the internet. I went to a restaurant in Ottawa to have dinner. At the restaurant, I was recognized by a group of people who approached me and took photos. I am in no way associated with these individuals and was not meeting with them. Oh, darn it. I need to remember to switch screens back and forth when I'm doing this. But somebody is pointing out this is from a Press Progress article that was going on around this, where it says, Cooper did not respond to multiple requests for comment from Press Progress about why he attended the event and if he condoned the group's behavior. So it's only now that it's catching up to him, you know, he's in the finding out phase, that he's like, I didn't know them. No, not at all.
So a number of the group's regular members say they are on security lists and banned from entering the House of Commons. For me, this is the takeaway here. Like, you're going to have, you know, loons do what they do. But when you have sitting members meeting with the loons, that's when it becomes a real issue.
And he's far from the only one to have been caught socializing, going on right-wing podcasts. Like, even look at the premier of Alberta going on stage with Tucker Carlson, literally spouting replacement theory BS. Like, it's a trend. You know, it's a trend across the board when you see these people. Like, even Pierre Poilievre was marching with the Freedom Convoy when he was running to become leader of the Conservative Party. It's not shocking at this point to see any of the conservative politicians getting chummy with right-wingers.
So Luke LeBrun reporting here, I can confirm the same guy was at the Red Pepper after party yesterday where Conservative MP Michael Cooper showed up. He was wearing the same clothes yesterday as he's wearing today. So you can see the shirt there. That is the same guy, as you can see, wearing the shirt right here, which is one of those, what does it say? Unmasked, unmuzzled.
And I think that last one right here says unafraid.
One of those. Oh my God, these clowns. All right, so Jagmeet Singh came out to respond to the reaction to the video, saying, by now you've probably seen the video. For days now, bullies in Ottawa have been...
And I will be covering that in just a moment. Actually, I think, is that all I wanted from the information from his video? I think so, yeah. So that's the main information about what happened. So everyone, you know, of course, go check out David Dole and watch the whole video. His Canadian videos don't do nearly as well as his other videos, so it's always good to, you know, give it a watch, to give it a boost. But I also wanted to touch on this. So like I said, there was another video that's talking about this, and this is from Power and Politics Power Panel, and this is from CBC News. So we don't need to watch the beginning of it because it's just a replay of that, and then it's asking a few politicians about their thoughts on it. But I was listening to it and I heard the panel speak, and I'm just like, there were some things in it that just kind of got under my skin. And so we'll see. I don't want to watch the whole thing here, so I'm trying to think about where it was in here. But again, this just kind of shows you what Canadian media is, and it's very like a tennis match, you know. This is this side, now this is this side, and we're just going back between the two of them, and you watch back and forth, but there's no, you know, you have people on there that are literally just to spout talking points, and there's no actual conversation or anything. It's just, here's my presented information, but there's no pushback. I know it's hard to explain, but this is why a lot of people aren't engaged with politics too, is because it's boring as hell. Let's skip up a bit.
Would have handled himself in that.
I think he has martial arts training as well, which
to violence. Mr. Singh is actually a very physically fit man. I think he.
Michelle Cadario, Kate Harrison here with me in studio, and Francoise Boivin. Shachi, what did you make of what we saw there? We have seen these protesters around Parliament really since the convoy, following, videotaping journalists, MPs. Mr. Singh has had this happen to him before. What was your reaction to what you saw?
I mean, it makes you sick to your stomach at a number of levels. First of all, important to realize and acknowledge and be appreciative of the fact that it did not escalate into violence. Mr. Singh is actually a very physically fit man. I think he could have handled himself in that.
I think he has martial arts training as well, which I would.
To me, this is just a weird comment. It's like, oh yeah, if he got into the fight, he could have taken them. Like, to me, that's just a weird comment. But then also, why don't you mention that, yes, he does have martial arts training? Why don't you mention his motivation for that training when he was a kid? It was because of the racism he was dealing with. Because a lot of these people on TV like to tiptoe around that, because they don't really want to acknowledge that Canada is a very racist country. And so they tend to tiptoe around that. But the reality is, Jagmeet got that martial arts training when he was young because of the harassment he was receiving for being a visible minority.
Wouldn't
So
tangle with him. No.
let's just be grateful for the restraint. The man who lied about hurling that insult is a little weasel, but I'm also very glad that he didn't shove Singh or do something like that, right? It could have gotten very bad very quickly. I spend a lot of time talking.
And there were armed security guards there as well. So it's hard to say how much it would have escalated, but I am glad it didn't, because I'm not against, calling out politicians in public, especially when they're near the building and stuff. But I want people to call them out on the policies. I don't want the name calling, just saying like corrupted bastard. Like, what is that about? But if you want to harass Justin Trudeau and say you're sponsoring a genocide, I'm kind of okay with that, But I don't want people to feel threatened for doing their job as a politician. I don't want people getting into their physical space or things of that sort when they're just trying to do their job. Especially when, it was about racism. Like it was racism. That's part of Canada.
Talking to Canadians in my world as a pollster and trying to better understand what is going on with civil society, what is going on with discourse, what is going on with people at what drives somebody to troll a Terry Fox memorial ceremony or always be following leaders or journalists with their what gives, what's up with that? I don't get it, but I do think it's like this toxic, vicious cycle of polarization and increasingly heightened language that comes at times, even from the rhetoric of our own political leaders. And then people react to that, they respond to that, it gets angrier and flintier. We're a long way from love and courage.
So part of my issues with what she's saying too is she said, the language coming from our leaders. She made that plural. It's not, it's coming from a leader. It's coming from Pierre Poilievre. He's the one that's into the name calling. He's the one that's encouraging people to do it. He mocks somebody else for needing security, saying he doesn't need it and stuff. And this type of name calling harassment tends to come from one side. You don't see too many NDP supporters, approaching conservatives and just calling them names. Where are the F. Pierre Poilievre flags? They don't exist. But the F. Trudeau flags definitely exist. Where's the imagery of hateful rhetoric towards Pierre Poilievre? But you see it towards Jagmeet Singh and Justin Trudeau, and down in the States you see that also with Kamala Harris and Biden and stuff. There was those things that they put on the back of the trucks to make it look like they were bound and gagged inside, and pictures with bullseyes over them and all this sort of stuff. This hateful rhetoric is coming from one side, but she's like, oh, no, we're not being civil anymore. And she's playing the civility politics a little bit too much here. You have to acknowledge where it's coming from instead of trying to both sides it.
I'm not going to condemn Mr. Singh for losing his cool. And he did not physically lose his cool, but you could see he was ticked off. And I feel for him. I feel for anybody who has to deal with that. And yes, at times they're going to snap. I've also seen an era of politician, and I'm not saying what was happening to them in that moment was acceptable. It was assault. But, we've all seen the footage of politicians who've had the egg thrown at them or the macaroni thrown at them, and they just walked away. They just didn't flinch, didn't react, kept going.
And I've seen some of those things where stuff was thrown at Justin Trudeau. Again, what side is this coming from? It's generally speaking, those actions are coming from the right. They're coming from supporters of Pierre Poilievre. And to even hint that Jagmeet didn't have a right to get upset over what was being yelled at him, come on. Like, oh, well, these other people got stuff thrown at them and they were fine. So therefore, he should deal with his harassment fine. But the harassment Jagmeet Singh receives on any typical day, given how loaded it is also with the racist vitriol, no, it's kind of astonishing he's made it this long without an episode like that. And to me, what's really sad is seeing how much he's changed with his attitude since he first started. Let's go back here. Like when he first ran to become the leader of the NDP, there's videos out there of like a woman getting up on stage where he was at and getting in his face and being racist. And Jagmeet was like, no, it's love, love will bring us together. And, the way that he dealt with it was just so positive and stuff. It even made the news in the United States about how he was able to do that. And then even later on, and like in the last election, you would see other people kind of get in his face and how above it he was and how calm he was and how much he would say we need to work together and get together. And all of that is really good. But you can see, especially over these past few years, how bad it's gotten that even Jagmeet is kind of like at his wit's end. Like I'm amazed he has held it together this long. Like I have a lot of criticisms about how he's running the NDP, but who he is as a person, from everything I know from meeting him, he's an amazing person. Full stop. He is an amazing person. I have my issues with how he's dealing with the NDP and running the NDP, but he is just an incredible person. And to see how beat down he's gotten over the years because of the constant harassment and stuff is really, really sad. He shouldn't have to deal with this. And then you have this woman here just not acknowledging where this hate is coming from, where this vitriol is coming from. It's coming from the right. Like, you're not even seeing, I don't know if liberals are even doing this towards Jagmeet. And it would just be nice if they named it for what it is.
And I'm not saying that politicians should have to do that. That is an incredibly hard thing to do. But clearly something is breaking down in the level of tolerance that public figures have to put up with this stuff. But something is also fundamentally breaking down in the ability for ordinary Canadians, Americans, people around the world to just not act like jerks.
Well, Michelle,
it's because it's being encouraged by the right. When you have your right-wing role models like Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, Pierre Poilievre, doing the name-calling, saying the vitriol, telling lies, flat-out lies, using manipulative techniques, without the media properly pushing back, this is what you get. Because I mentioned it in my last video, when you have Pierre Poilievre up on a podium, just spewing out nonsense and lies, but nobody is challenging him in the moment as an, I wouldn't, like, uneducated in the sense that you're not plugged into politics. So let's say you're not plugged into politics at all, and you don't know, you're a low information voter. So you're a low information voter, you see Pierre Poilievre up on a podium spewing this rhetoric, which I know, and I'm sure most of you know, are just flat out lies, but none of the reporters are pushing back in that moment. How is that low information voter supposed to know that they're being lied to when it's not happening at that moment that they're watching this press conference? Nobody's going to go back and see a statement from maybe a news organization that said, oh, just to clarify, blah, blah, blah. Nobody's going to see that. It needs to be happening in the moment, and it doesn't. So if you're a low information voter that just tunes in every now and then and you hear this rhetoric from Pierre Poilievre, but you don't hear any, how do you know he's lying? That's what the reporters' jobs are, to point that out to people.
We're seeing this a lot with Mr. Singh. We're seeing a lot with politicians. There are women municipal politicians all over Quebec who have been bowing out because of the way they're being treated. Just sorry, I spoke over you there, but you go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like, I think we all have to just kind of reflect. When you're calling people names inside the House of Commons chamber, you're going to expect to be called names outside of the House of Commons chamber. And I think every single one of those MPs who are, flailing insults, calling people liars, and kind of being histrionic inside the chamber should kind of take a good look at themselves to see what kind of example they're setting. Because
So this was the other thing that kind of got under my skin. And then we don't really need to watch any more of this. So let's get back to here. She was saying the name calling. Who's doing the name calling in the House? Again, it's Pierre Poilievre referring to people as wackos. That's like his latest thing that he wants to make, an insult, but it's really just weird. It's Pierre Poilievre who's doing the bulk of that. But then she conflates it with other leaders or politicians saying that the others are lying. Okay, you don't get to put those in the same category. Those are two different things. So name calling and being shallow like that shouldn't be happening in the House floor. But the thing is that there's this stupid etiquette that has to, the decorum of the question period and stuff like that. So if you accuse somebody of lying, if you accuse them of being dishonest, you get kicked out of the room. Like, you literally get kicked out because that's insulting them. When you're just stating fact, you're not allowed in the moment as a politician on Parliament floor to say what that person, what Pierre Poilievre just said is a lie. Okay, calling someone a liar isn't calling them a name. It's a descriptor, But when Pierre Poilievre is up there referring to Justin Trudeau as wacko or fascist or communist, like, those are different things. Those are not descriptors, because Justin Trudeau is a lot of things. A fascist is not one. And it's just so frustrating again that you have these civility, journalists, people on this panel that are just trying to both sides it so hard without actually just stating it's coming from the right. Could you please, if you think that this is an issue on both sides, can you please show the examples? And I don't just mean a one-off example here or there of Jagmeet Singh or Justin Trudeau just calling people names. I think it has happened occasionally, like Justin Trudeau has slipped up and said something. But we have reels and reels of things that Pierre Poilievre and other conservative politicians say. Where is that for the other parties? Because even if you look provincially, Doug Ford has said some really disgusting things on the House floor, but as soon as you say he's a liar, you get kicked out. Yet he doesn't get kicked out for saying fairly offensive names towards people. Like, they want a time of civility and stuff like that. Well, then go after the people who are disturbing it, Don't try to both sides this. And Jagmeet did reply to this on Twitter, saying, by now you've probably seen the video. For days now, bullies in Ottawa have been spewing hate and harassing Canadians who don't agree with them, and Indigenous women being called a Nazi, staff being harassed, journalists being yelled at. That's the country Pierre Poilievre wants. So he says it, and this is true. Me, I believe everyone should feel safe walking our streets. I believe we need to stand up to bullies and shut down hate. Canadians believe in lifting each other up, not tearing each other down. Stand with us. So he's been getting a fair bit of positive attention for how he handled this. And again, I'm just a little worried it's going to get to his head, because I don't think he's helping the NDP at all. remaining the leader. What he has done as the leader of the NDP has been very disappointing. The direction he's gone in, his political instinct is just really, really bad. His political instinct sucks. And they're not going to make any gains. And it's just so frustrating there wasn't a leadership run at the last convention. Because, again, this is something that a lot of people don't seem to understand. In order to get to the convention where the vote is going to be held as to whether or not there's going to be a leadership race, you have to have money. Money to travel to the convention space, money for the hotel, money to get in, all this sort of stuff. You have to be of a certain class in order to participate at that level of the party politics. And so the only people that make it to the convention are the elite within it. The insiders, the establishment. And so those are the ones voting as to whether or not there should be a leadership race, not the base as a whole. And so when you have those establishment characters there, what they do is they look at it like Jagmeet Singh has done nothing terribly wrong, but he also hasn't done much right either. But because he hasn't done anything offensive or wrong, we're going to keep him. But where are the gains in the party? You know, where's the excitement? Where's the people online saying, yeah, this is what we want to see in the future? Instead, I've been showing stories where he has just fallen so flat on his face. Took him 11 months to have like a very forceful statement about what's happening in Gaza. There might be others, but that one's the one that comes to my mind recently. Whereas I've seen other NDP MPs be very forceful about what's happening in Gaza. You know, and then, so he finally comes out with that statement, yay! And then what does he do? Try to make it about carbon tax. And it's just like, going into the next election, Jagmeet Singh can't be the leader of the NDP. Justin Trudeau can't be the leader of the Liberals if they have any hope in hell of beating the Conservatives. Even switching them out, there's no guarantee that will happen. It's, I just wish that there was a better way for the base to get more control over the party again, but when the establishment blocks you out, and I have my stories about trying to become a candidate, it really does restrict how that party can grow when you have a few people inside determining how it will grow. Anyway, let's check the Sandbox. And welcome everyone who has come join the stream. Let's see. Soul Life, Democrats should act like this. Oh yeah? Well, you're only pro NRA because you're corrupt and can't beat me in a fight, bucko. Let's see. People having conversations among yourselves, talking to yourselves, which is good. Let's see. I'm trying to find things that... Mozart, do not shove, sing, or do anything like that. Judith, they're Nazis. Yes, the people who were harassing Singh were Nazis. Crotchety, conservatives are usually the ones who say that our elected leaders should be afraid of their lives, but that chills democracy. And I've covered it way back when Pierre Poilievre was very nonchalant about the harassment and stuff like that. And again, he gets to be in that position because he can afford the security if he needs it, but also the people who are doing the harassing in large part are people who support him, so he doesn't have to worry about it. So it's easy for him to say, like, oh yeah, politicians just need thicker skin. But if he was ever challenged the way that that guy who was harassing Jagmeet was challenged, he'd cower like that too. Like Pierre is just a little weasel. Like he would not, like he buckles basically to the right wing all the time. Like he will never push back against the right wing because he has no spine. BKK, civility politics goes both ways, or no ways. You cannot expect people to continually take the high road when dealing with Nazis. Very true. And then Crouchety saying that they agree. People even try to use civility politics to say others can't even call out racism or Nazis. Yes, when you call a racist, that isn't being mean. It's a descriptor. So when you call a liar, that's not name calling them. You are describing a personality trait, a behavior that they engage with. Let's see. BKK, purposely obtuse pundits. Yes. I just hope I'm not going to get hit with a copyright for showing the power politics things. It's so tricky to know what is safe on the Canadian news media, what is okay to actually show. Like, are news shows like that okay to show, or is it just news clips? It's I will learn most likely the hard way. Judith saying now we have MPs who represent legitimate Nazis. Yep, all over. You see the connections all over with conservatives in Canada. It's disturbing. Look Swine. Don't know if I've seen you in the Sandbox before, so welcome. I want to post more about the pager explosion are not much different from suicide vest explosion because it's true. Both my accounts were shut out though. Not entirely sure. I have seen a fair bit of news clips, and I'm going to be talking about that next, covering the pager explosions and stuff. But again, it's very depending on who you're watching. It's like it was an amazing targeted attack. Okay, that's the bulk of what you're watching on mainstream media. Let's see. Okay, so I don't have too much on the story about the pagers exploding because it's still a developing story and a lot of information is coming out from it, and it's horrific. It's horrific. To try to claim that this is a win for Israel is disgusting because so many innocent people were injured and some killed. But you have people who are pro-Israel, Zionists, saying that, well, if they had any of those pagers, then obviously they were part of Hezbollah and they deserve to die, which is horrid. You know, like, it feels like people are thinking we're in a superhero movie. where, you know, in the first Iron Man movie, there's a scene where he's in his suit and he's gone to this village, nondescript village in the Middle East where they're being attacked, and you have kids being kidnapped and the fathers are about to be shot, and he's standing there with his suit, and then all of a sudden all the attackers grab hostages and are holding guns to them and stuff. But then his suit does this thing where it scans all the faces and immediately identifies who the bad guys are. And then he hits a button and then all these little bullets come out and hit just the bad guys and only the bad guys. You see, that's not real. You can't do that in real life. That's not a thing you can do. You know, we don't have precision targeting like that. It's not a thing. And it's almost like people, Zionists, are thinking, no, that's exactly basically what happened. Was we just handed out these pagers that we got to explode all at the same time, but they were just magically only in the hands of the bad guys. A 10-year-old child died because of it. Innocent people had limbs blown off, will suffer life-altering injuries. At least 9 people were killed. They weren't all Hezbollah. And then just the horror it caused, the terror it caused, this is exactly what a terrorist attack is. Strike terror into the population, that you can just be going about your day and then suddenly you're hearing explosions all around you as, you know, hips are being blown up, legs are being blown up, just out of the blue, your hand is being blown up. And you don't know where it's coming from necessarily when it first happens. It's just happening, and then you freak out because like what's causing it, what's being blown up. And then you worry if you're going to be a target or the person next to you and all this sort of stuff. Like, this was just a horrific attack in every way imaginable. Okay? Because we're not in the movies. It's not like we can single out who the exact bad guys are and just hit them. And that has been shown over and over and over again. Even with the United States targeting, you know, having their precision targets, and yet, oh, well, this wedding party just happened to get wiped out. Oh, well, their family just happened to be with them at the time that we hit the bomb. You know, and Israel is so bad for it right now, where it's like, well, you know, there might have been Hamas tunnels under this hospital, so we're just going to destroy the hospital. And then all these babies in incubators are going to be left abandoned. Like, just beyond horrific. So this is from AP News. Hezbollah is hit by a wave of exploding pagers that killed at least 9 people and injured thousands. Beirut, pagers used by hundreds of members of the militant group Hezbollah exploded near simultaneously Tuesday in Lebanon and Syria, killing at least 9 people, including an 8-year-old, okay, so not 10, an 8-year-old girl, and wounding several thousand, officials say. Hezbollah and the Lebanese government blame Israel for what appeared to be a sophisticated remote attack. An American official said Israel briefed the United States on Tuesday after the conclusion of the operation, in which small amounts of explosive secreted in the pagers were detonated. The person spoke on condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to discuss the information publicly. The Israel military declined to comment. So it wasn't pagers used by hundreds of militant group Hezbollah. A lot of innocent people had those as well. And even then, Hezbollah they're a political party. They're not just a group. You know, they're just not a militant group. They're more like a political party. So all the servants in that party too also had those pagers. And like, again, there's just so much information still coming out about this that it's hard to decipher what is real and not, because there was something about like an American college or something everyone there was told to swap out their pagers a couple weeks ago. Like, there's just so much information that may be real, may not be real. So I'm not going to be focusing too much on the hows or who's and stuff like that. I just wanted to point out a couple of reactions to this story. So Arthur here, retired ambassador and senior exec in security and intelligence, trans ally, Zionist, anti-racism activist. Anti-racism. Says today's targeting of Hezbollah operatives was brilliant. It struck a major blow against a terror group that has fired thousands of rockets against civilians, all while the useless UN mission in Lebanon stands by. There is a price to pay. It was just a brilliant operation. And as Sam Haresh is pointing out, this is the anti-Semitism advisor at the University of Ottawa, appointed by somebody in French. Oh, official Twitter account of Ottawa's president. So appointed by the president of Ottawa, University of Ottawa, tasked with apparently keeping students safe on campus, posting gleefully about the attack that killed and injured innocent bystanders in a densely populated area, including a young girl. And this is the Canadians for Justice and Peace in the Middle East. Also commenting on that tweet, just saying this is the Ottawa advisor on anti-Semitism is celebrating as brilliant a mass terror attack that indiscriminately targeted thousands of people with no safeguards and that they were away from public spaces or family members. A young girl was among those killed, plus 2,750 injured. Horrific. Don't think. And I don't think that's the only thing he sent out about this. Let's see. There was like another image. He might have actually taken it down, where he was like showing a Looney Tunes picture. Twitter. Oh, retweeting Brianna Wu. That's a good gauge of character there. What was she saying? She was saying number of death threats I got yesterday was truly insane, and from the people deluded enough to think Hezbollah are the good guys. I've been numb to this for a really long time, but doing it for some goddamn terrorists that turned Lebanon into a war-ravaged, ungovernable shit show. And Artur was also saying, find it fascinating how many people online are coming to the defense of Hezbollah. They ignored the decades of terrorism. Terrorism from who? And forget that it propped up the Assad regime, still does, during genocidal during its genocidal campaign against its own people. Absolute hypocrisy, you say? Yeah, upset that somebody would prop up a genocidal campaign. Absolute hypocrisy, huh? Huh? But also Sarah Jama was replying to this tweet saying this is utterly disgusting. And this is the CIJA, the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs, saying paging those following the news. Friendly reminder, the only ones vulnerable are those carrying Hezbollah's equipment and technology used to coordinate and plan terror attacks. If you're not Hezbollah terrorists, you're safe. So So that was a bunch of lies. And again, making a joke out of this, innocent people died. You know, not everyone who is holding those were terrorists or even part of Hezbollah. Not to mention, it's not like they could screen to see who were these people standing beside at the time. Yeah. When you set off an explosion, it's not contained to one person necessarily. So if you have your child hanging onto your hand and their head just happens to be at the same level as your hip, what do you think is going to happen? It really shows the actual hypocrisy when you have these Zionists that are always, you know, on about how civilians shouldn't be targeted, how they're under attack and all this sort of stuff. But the instant it happens to people in Gaza, to Hezbollah, well, they all deserve it. There's no backstory, you know, there's no nuance behind it. They're just horrible people that deserve to die, according to them. You know, the only way we could prevent these people from killing all of us is by killing all of them first, which, no, without any acknowledgement or understanding as to how they got there in the first place. You know, why Hamas launched an attack from Gaza? It wasn't just because they were evil. It was because the decades and decades of oppression and, you know, open air prison that they've been kept in. The fact that they were denied services, denied resources, their water is being, you know, their wells are being cemented over, their livelihoods are being destroyed, their homes are being destroyed, they're being kicked out of their homes. The attack didn't come out of the blue. Anyway, let's check the Sandbox, and then we'll get into the next batch of stories. Like I said, I don't want to be on this live stream for a very long time. I have some things that I need to get done this evening. I'm hitting crunch time on a few things. So, we'll check the Sandbox, and then we'll start talking more about how disappointing the NDP has been in BC. Hello, Shamigli. I still want to call you Shamagli. And hello, the anti-corporatist. The anti-corporatist saying yesterday was pager, today was walkie-talkie. Shake my head. I haven't seen anything today. Soul Life, wait, unalive vests go boom from a person choosing to wear one to target others, but pagers are not chosen and military affected the owner. And mainly affected the owner. Yeah. It's not the same thing. Crotchety, there is an opinion piece by The Guardian that links to someone pointing out that Israel is a signatory to a ban on such body trap civilian looking devices like the pager bombs. It wouldn't surprise me because we've seen these, like the IDF, do so many things that had it been done the other way around, there would have been so much outcry. Like, I'm just thinking back to when they sent soldiers into a hospital to shoot people in the beds. You know, people who weren't threats. They just shot them in the beds. So many things just, oh. So, Life, I'm curious why they didn't think to check the inside of the exploded walkie-talkies after the pagers exploded. Could be lots of reasons. They got them from different sources. Again, it's kind of unknown. I don't know how they exploded. It could have just been battery overloads, like if you open them up, not everything would seem out of sort necessarily. Like, unless you're able to identify bomb components that look like components that should be in there. And then it gets to the point of, what do you check? Do you check now all your cars, your TVs, your radios, your, your watches? Like, and part of it is too that Israel wants to cause that paranoia. Where you're afraid of touching anything because now suddenly anything might be a bomb designed or meant to kill you. The anti-corporatists, they were set to go off a second before exploding so that people would pick them up and look at them. Lots of eyes and hands lost. I heard something about that too, that they were called or something ahead of time. Just again, very disgusting. Let's see. BKK, wait, it's pronounced Shemigli, not Shemegli? Yes, I got corrected once after calling them Shemegli for almost the entire time. Turns out it's Shemigli. It's a different spot of the break in the I can't think of the word right now, where it's the beat of the different words. I totally forgotten what you call that. This syllables? Syllables? I don't know. But it's the break in the syllable, I think, is what I'm trying to say, is a letter different than I thought it was. The anti-corporatist, it's literally terror. Okay, so why don't we get into the next big thing that I wanted to cover. I'm trying to, get more videos together and stuff to make it a little bit more interesting than just watching me read news articles. Though I'd like to think I'm somewhat dynamic in how I do it. So I still have some tweets I'm going to be reading, but I tried to put together some more videos, short videos for this one. Because again, I like to show a narrative. And when I say this, I don't mean it in the sense of a narrative for my opinion. It's a narrative as in to make the story flow, to make sense. So it goes from this point to this point to this point and show how it's all connected. So when I say it, I mean like a story narrative, not like my own personal biases narrative. So I try to get a whole bunch of things together to show a narrative, to make it a little bit more interesting and a little bit more informative, I find. So let's see, when do I need to put the earbud in? I don't like putting the earbud in until I absolutely have to, because they hurt my ear holes after a while. Recently, news kind of exploded out of BC, that is British Columbia, the province where Lance from the Surf is the unknown prince, that the NDP, so that's supposed to be the progressive parties in Canada, both federally and provincially. They're supposed to be like the most left-leaning party. has now declared that they're going to force people into treatment for drug addiction. And that sounds bad enough already, but it's so much worse than just what I said. Because this isn't just for people who are addicted to drugs. It's also people with brain damage or mental health issues. And so suddenly, this little umbrella as to who they can force into treatment is getting slightly bigger and slightly bigger. It's not just one group of people, but it's all these different groups of people that they don't want to have to deal with as a society, because it actually takes effort and work and policy. They just want to clean them up and shove them away. So the fact that it was the NDP that put this policy through is disgusting. Yeah, and like I said, it's a lot worse than what I just said. Why don't we get into it? So this is from Mayor Ken Sim. Today joined by Premier David Eby and a couple Indigenous bands that I can't pronounce, as the province government announced the introduction of mandatory care, marking a first step towards addressing the mental health and addictions crisis. For too long, our most vulnerable have been falling through the cracks without readily accessible services. This marks a new chapter for care and compassion. Compassion in our province. This is just the beginning. More to come tomorrow. So that's how it started. And then things like mandatory care. In some of the articles, the mandatory got changed to the word secure. That's because, as we will go over, a lot of these places that they will be sending these people to are literal prisons. Prisons. And so critical criminology is just replying to the NDP statement that they sent out about this, saying you are literally jailing people. There's no compassion or evidence behind this. Crass, cruel, political opportunism, nothing else. Social Democrats pushing social murder. And this is the statement. We want to help people get the care they need and help families be whole again while keeping communities safe. With compassion and evidence as our guide, we're launching Dignified Secure, there's that secure word, for those with brain injuries, mental health illness, and severe addiction. Who gets to determine this? The mental health? Who gets to determine how bad the brain injury has to be before they get into this secure location? How bad, what is a severe addiction compared to a mild addiction? What would be the difference there? Where is the metric? Where is the cutoff? And this is the statement from David Eby: safer for you and your community and safer people who need secure care. Real action to help you with secure care. And they want to say that they used evidence as our guide. No, they didn't. This is not based in evidence. In fact, this is the polar opposite of what the evidence suggests that it should happen. Same thing when here in Ontario, when Doug Ford closed 10 of the 17 supervised consumption sites. That goes against what the evidence says you should do. And so here again is the BC NDP trying to claim evidence when the evidence shows this is the worst thing you can do. You can't force people into treatment. It doesn't work. The relapse rate of people who are forced into treatment is in the 90s. And to just take away people's autonomy like that, You know, there has to be a wide range of options of treatment. There has to be mental health care in this country. There has to be social issues being taken care of, like issues with the housing and wages and all these other things that need to be dealt with in tandem, along with, you know, the help with the addictions and things of that sort. You can't just force people into treatment, then shove them back into the same environments, which started a lot of their addictions to begin with. And so here is from CTV News Vancouver. Critics slam BC's Premier's involuntary care. Is that what we're calling it? Involuntary, but it's care. Announcement, cite lack of evidence. So here they're saying evidence as our guide. But here, the critics are citing a lack of evidence.
This comes on the heels of the Premier's push toward involuntary care, announcing a new care facility for people with addiction and mental health issues. And it's getting blowback from both sides. Political opponents accuse David Eby of doing an about-face, while others claim there is a lack of evidence and worry it will only cause more harm. Here's CTV's Isabella Zavarisi.
This is one of the sites for a dedicated mental health unit on the grounds of the Alouette Correctional Centre in Maple Ridge.
Alouette Correctional Centre. In other words, a prison. And we'll get to another video where a woman does a beautiful breakdown of what all this means. And it turns out the Alouette Correctional Centre is the only women prison in BC.
Its purpose, involuntary care for people with addiction and mental health issues.
That we cannot wait. This is a group of people that need intensive interventionist support. They are not able to ask for help for themselves.
The Premier says the move is in response to overlapping issues, mental illness, brain injuries, and addiction.
So where do people go for the mental health issues? You know, where? Because what a lot of people have been pointing out here is that instead of focusing on this forced care, you need to have voluntary care available, because there's so many people that are desperate for care, looking for care, only to find there's nothing around, nothing for them.
Instead of being released into the community, people can now be moved into these facilities without their consent.
They will not benefit from voluntary treatment.
Critics believe otherwise, pointing to a lack of evidence, particularly for those who use substances.
Forced treatment, it just doesn't have the promise that we hope that it does. And it sets it up for so much risk for overdose, for severing connections. And it's not going to get us where we need to go.
A Vancouver writer who was treated for substance.
Some of the things that I've seen pointed out is, for one thing, when you're forced into this care, you're forced to go just be completely off. And that can actually send a person's body into shock and can kill them. The other thing is that these programs are about 2 months long. So during that time, the people will quite often lose a tolerance for the drugs that they were taking. So then when they're released and they go to take these drugs again, because again, this forced treatment doesn't actually solve the root causes of the addiction. And so for a lot of people, the first thing they do when they get out is go back to their old habits, especially if they're returned to the exact same environment that they were pulled from. So they've lost a lot of their tolerance, but they don't necessarily know that, which means a lot of people end up overdosing and dying as soon as they get out of these treatment centers.
Use on her own terms, agrees.
There are times, absolutely, where interventions are required. The mandatory care that they're talking about is, I don't think is not going to work and is very problematic in terms of civil liberties.
The BCCLA was pretty concerned about this announcement. We think it's infringing on people's rights in a way that's not acceptable.
Eby's announcement drew accusations from his opponents. The leader of BC's Conservatives saying, quote, "This kind of flip-flopping only demonstrates a lack of leadership and vision."
I like that. The flip-flopping is the issue. The lack of leadership and vision, because he's flip-flopping on that. Whereas the conservatives are like, oh no, we absolutely want to do this. We've always been, that's exactly what they've always wanted. But this NDP leader has been flip-flopping on what he wants. But we're totally down for this.
And vision. Those who question the policy say greater investments in housing would be a better alternative.
Safe and secure housing was pivotal to my recovery.
There's no timeline on when these mental health facilities will be up and running, but the Premier says the plan is to move forward as quickly as possible.
Yeah, let's just move as quickly as possible before we find out what all the risks are. How about that? Before we do any more research, because if we do any more research, we might find out that, this is a bad idea. So let's just do it first and deal with the consequences later. And then here's Guy Felicia said, it didn't have to be this way. And he's been very outspoken about this. I came across him on Twitter not too long ago when I was covering what was happening here in Ontario. And he has his story is he almost died 6 times from overdoses, but he was saved because of things like supervised consumption sites. And because he made it through those periods in his life, he got to a place now where he's healthy, he's addiction free, he has a family, children, all those things that would have never happened had he not had the services he needed when he needed them. And so there's going to be so many more people who need these services that a lot of them now won't even necessarily go and seek them out. If you're in BC, because if you're in BC and you have an issue with addiction and you want help, but you want a certain type of help, you want to go to a supervised consumption site, you might now be afraid to do that because you're worried you're going to be tossed in to one of these, secure care locations, that you're going to be ripped off of the street and thrown into prison. They're literal prisons. So this actually discourages people from seeking help. So he says, I read today's news release about the plan to introduce secure care for people with brain injuries, mental health illness, and severe addiction. The release says it intended to support the growing population, emphasis mine, of people with severe addictions, brain injuries from related drug poisonings combined with mental health disorders and psychosis. The thing is that there has been a growing crisis. You should be dealing with the root cause of why that is happening. And a lot of it, again, it's not like it's a mystery. We know. It's housing. It's the cost of living. It's lack of access to mental health care. It's lack of access to health care that's causing these problems. You don't get to then just look at what the end result is and punish people for, turning to drugs as an escape, as a diversion, as a coping mechanism, when all these other things in their lives, the things that would have kept them stable and happy, have been stripped away from them. He says, you know what would have been better? Not letting organized crime poison people in the first place. If we had implemented regulation, a real nanny state system of rules and controls for opioids people seek, so we could have cut organized crime out. So he's basically talking about legalizing all drugs. Stop new users and kids from trying them and preventing brain injuries from happening in the first place. We wouldn't be in the position, and many people would still be alive and or uninjured. One day in the distant future, society will figure out that moralizing over substance use, just some substances, well, some are deemed okay, was not worth all the death and destruction, and they will look back at these decisions and will think we are all a bunch of complete morons. And so for people who are interested, this is from the BC government news. Province launches secure care for people with brain injury, mental health issues, and severe addictions. It's a long read for people who are interested. I will try to remember to post this in the description box at the end because I forgot to do it first for people who want to read the whole thing. Or you can just Google the title you see on the screen right now to save me from having to remember to do that. And so here's a little video clip of Guy Felicia actually talking about this. And this is from Mo Amir. The BC NDP government pulled harm reduction kiosks from Vancouver Island hospitals after conservative outrage, but at what cost? So this isn't just the first thing the BC NDP has done. There was also these little kiosks people could go to get like clean needles, clean crack pipes and stuff, but there was outrage from the Conservatives, so the NDP buckled. So the Conservatives are like, oh no, they're flip-flopping, wink wink, but they're actually happy because the NDP is just, you know, falling for what the Conservatives want. You know, they're just buckling to the Conservatives.
For us, with substance use, when people are using these facilities or accessing these services, if they don't have clean supplies, then they will use dirty supplies. And then these health complications can come and really be a challenge.
What sort of health complications are we talking about if people are using quote unquote dirty inhalation kits or dirty, snorting kits for cocaine?
Well, you can get cracks in your mouth, blood-to-blood contact with another individual. You get Hep C, HIV. So, and then it's like, so here's the thing. You can hand out a $2.50 bag of supplies, or you can spend, $250,000 in later on in life health complications on an individual.
Yeah, that's preventative care 101. And it's not just for people who use drugs. It's for everyone. Like, again, we need full universal health care that includes vision, hearing, physiotherapy, mental health care, all of it. Because if you prevent them from getting worse, it's so much cheaper and affordable for the country to deal with it before it becomes a crippling problem. And it's the same with dental care, because now that there's that means-tested dental care for seniors, the dentists are horrified at what they're coming across because people have left it off so much that by the time, they basically can no longer chew, the cost is so much more. Whereas if they had just been able to get that cavity filled back then, get that cleaning filled back then, get this little issue looked at way back when it would have cost barely anything. People left that off because they couldn't afford it. And now it's causing thousands to tens of thousands for an individual. And it's the same with this. Like, if people were just given proper treatment from the beginning, had supervised consumption sites, as he was saying, getting rid of the gangs that are involved with drugs by, decriminalizing them so that they could be regulated and stuff, so many more people would be alive today, and there wouldn't be such a strain on the healthcare system for when it finally gets to the point where there's no other choice, but they have to go to an ER or something of that sort.
So then why don't the BC NDP just say, hey, these things that the Conservatives are rallying against, if the Conservatives had their way, you would actually have outbreaks of hepatitis C or HIV or other infectious diseases. Why don't they just say that?
You know what? That's the $1 million question that I keep asking. It's like, we already have 30 years of evidence that these reduce multiple health costs in our society. And so, this is why they're there. And, taking them away will just make it extremely worse.
Now, the BC Conservatives also say that by distributing these, they call it drug paraphernalia, but basically these harm reduction supplies, by distributing these, the government, the province, is actually enabling addiction. So let me ask you, if someone doesn't have access to these supplies to consume drugs, don't they just stop using drugs then because they don't have the harm reduction supplies?
That was a bit of sarcasm there. And I pointed that out in my last live stream as well. It's like, the Conservatives' belief on how you can cure the drug issues is by, not supplying clean needles and crack pipes, not having supervised consumption sites, and making all hard drugs illegal, which they currently are. You see, if you do all of that, then there won't be a drug problem anymore in the country. And that's what Conservatives seem to think would magically happen. Instead, what it just does is lead to a lot more illness and death and despair and discarded needles on the street. And yeah.
No, because
that's what the conservatives are saying.
Well, if you take away a hospital, do people get sick?
I think they probably do.
Yeah. Now, this is a really good TikTok that also breaks it down, and I didn't know who this person was, so I did look her up because, again, I get wary just randomly like, oh, here's a TikTok that seems informative. I'm just going to believe it with no research or anything. I do, I have reliable sources on Twitter that I tend to go to, as well as like government officials, reporters, things of that sort, that I tend to use their tweets and stuff. But when I come across something new, I like to learn a little bit about them first. And she has a webpage. So she is a Vancouver criminal lawyer that does these TikToks. So this is definitely in her line of work. And she knows a lot about it and has a really good video on it.
There is so much to be angry about these days, but the thing that's got me riled up today is the provincial NDP government announcing involuntary care for people who have brain injuries, for people who have addictions, and for people who have mental health conditions that are not willing to go into treatment. So basically, if you're not willing to choose a pathway to treatment, they're going to force you to do it.
And who gets to choose again? This has happened in the past, and all that happens is certain groups of people are targeted. Other people are afraid to come out and acknowledge that they're struggling with something. It's used as a manipulation technique. Somebody on Twitter that I know was mentioning that once their family forced them into a treatment center way back when, and then after that, they would threaten to put her back in there if she didn't do exactly what they told them to do. And, I've had a family member try to force me into some sort of care for my mental health. But the thing is at the time that they wanted that, I was actually doing okay. Like I had just gotten a job and things of that sort. But what they were doing was projecting their own issues onto me. And so that type of thing where you can force other people into this, it gets abused from the get-go. And it's been shown over and over again in history that that's exactly what happens.
And it's not just that they're going to force you into treatment and deny you your constitutionally protected right to autonomy about your body and about your mental health, and your right not to be arbitrarily detained, and your rights not to be discriminated against on the basis of your mental health or your disability if it's a brain injury or an addiction. Not only is that completely contrary to all of those constitutional rights that people have, but where the NDP is announcing they're going to create these 400 mental health beds is shocking. Some of them are going to be created at Surrey Pretrial Centre. And if you're not a criminal defense lawyer that practices in the Lower Mainland of British Columbia, you probably don't know that Surrey Pretrial Centre is a place where people do not get help for their mental health. It doesn't have mental health facilities, but it is also overcrowded. It is understaffed and under-resourced.
So yeah, let's just go to a place that's not designed to handle people with mental health crises and addiction issues. Let's just go and cram them all into this overcrowded prison. It's almost akin to, we have people that, like, we need to open up hospital beds in hospitals. So let's just take those people who are in the hospital already and shove them into long-term care homes that are already overcrowded and understaffed. Now we'll just double them up, triple them up, quadruple them up to a room or something.
Creating more mental health beds there and increasing the population of people that are in Surrey pretrial without increasing all of the corresponding resources is only going to do a disservice to the people who are there who aren't involuntarily detained. It's going to take resources away from people who are already not getting what they need. And because it's a pretrial center, it's used for people who aren't even guilty of the crimes they're accused of. Meaning these people who have mental health issues, addictions, or brain injuries, who are accused of criminal offenses but not yet found guilty and are being held in pretrial detention, are then being streamed into involuntary care without the involvement of a judge to determine their entitlement to bail, because the government has determined that they're mentally ill and they need to be locked up to protect themselves.
Like I was saying, like, who gets to determine who is mentally ill and all this sort of stuff? And then this just goes back to, again, this country has a really bad history with eugenics, you know, where it's like, oh, these people that we consider to be mentally ill, we're just going to sterilize them. Why does the government get to determine that over a person, as opposed to a health professional that can actually be like, okay, this person is or isn't a risk to themselves, you know, to just take away people's ability to choose what happens to their body, to choose what kind of treatment they go into? Because we've seen how bad this government, the Canadian government, can get when they start dictating these types of terms. Because even into the 2010s, there were cases of Indigenous women being sterilized without their consent.
This is bonkers. The second location where these are going to be put is Alouette Women's Institution, the only women's prison in British Columbia. This is awful. This is awful. And I heard somebody attempting to justify this on the radio today by saying, well, you know, we lock up people who have dementia, so we should be able to lock up people who have mental illness and brain injury. The problem is significantly different between locking up people with dementia and locking up people who have mental illness and brain injury. And that is capacity to make your own decisions. The people with dementia who end up in involuntary care in locked facilities are people who have dementia to a degree that they are incapable of looking after themselves, incapable of making decisions. That is very different. They don't have the ability to exercise autonomy. Whereas with people who have addiction, people who have brain injury, people who have mental health conditions, they still have the autonomy and the ability to make decisions. It's just that the government doesn't like the decisions that they're making.
And that is a really, really good distinction and point right there. You know, it's just the government doesn't like the decisions that you're making, but, you know, because a lot of people will use the whole dementia thing, or like we lock up certain types of people with certain types of mental health issues. But it's a good distinction to make that, you know, the people that do get locked up are people who fundamentally can't make choices anymore because of their dementia or their mental health issue, versus people who can make choices. It's one the family doesn't like, or it's one that the city doesn't like, or the government doesn't like, because it's a hassle, it's a burden. It's not what they want them to do. They need to conform in order to function in the society that we want them to function in. And so we just want to like take away these people who refuse to conform to our standards and get rid of them so we don't have to deal with them anymore, as opposed to giving them the individualized treatment that they deserve.
Or some doctor or psychiatrist who's assessing them doesn't like the decisions that they're making. That is very different. People are entitled to make decisions you don't agree with. And we have a criminal justice system if those decisions involve criminal activity that can assist with that. And if those decisions involve the use of drugs, we have some addictions treatment in this province, and we should be spending more money on making more voluntary addictions and mental health treatment available to people who want it. Because when people have access to those resources, when there is no difficulty obtaining those resources, people will get to a point where they are ready to access those resources and they will access them. But creating barriers and making it an involuntary committal for an indefinite period of time, that's not the answer. And we're not going to lock people up to get out of the addictions crisis.
We have to deal with the root causes why people are turning to the drugs in the first place. So I have here another, it's a tweet thread from Sarah Jama. Again, she's just so great on so many of the issues. I wish she could be prime minister. Party politics, parliamentary system won't allow it. She can't just run to be president of Canada, unfortunately. And I do have a cat on my lap right now, which is making this very difficult. And he's a very big fat, heavy kitty. Ugh, there we go. Say hi to everyone, Abernathy. He loves sitting on my lap and cutting off the blood flow to my legs. And considering my ADHD and how often I have to move around, it's it can get a little problematic with him on my lap all the time. Anyway, a tweet thread from Sarah Jama, who is just like one of the best politicians we have in this country. And she's replying to Fred here, who is proud Hamiltonian, 12 years as mayor, 10 years as a councillor. And he's quote tweeting the Bay Observer saying British Columbia to institute compulsory treatment for persons with mental illness and addiction. And he's saying this is the beginning of a way forward. People with severe mental health and addiction issues are not capable of making informed decisions on their health and well-being. It must be done by the province with funding assistance from the federal government. Again, who gets to determine that? Who gets to determine what severe mental health is? Like, do I qualify? My mental health is so bad, I'm on disability. So does that mean I lose all right to autonomy, all right to make my own decisions? Because I can't function in society the way that somebody like him wants me to. I can't conform to, to do the jobs that this guy thinks I should be doing. And so Sarah's quote tweeting him saying, warehousing people without consent isn't the way forward. Funding for treatment options is. There was a time in Canada disabled children and people were forcibly sent to institutions like this and were physically, emotionally, sexually abused. This approach paves the way for experimental treatment, forced sterilization, medical racism, indentured slavery, and more. These forced programs were created under the guise of better treatment for sick people. The last institution like it closed in 2009. Trudeau even apologized for the human rights violations. And Sarah has, I believe she studied this specifically in university. Like, she knows this. I've watched a talk she gave on this that was just super powerful and emotional. So this is something like she is well aware of. She knows the history. This isn't her just thinking these things happen. She knows the pattern. She knows the history of this country. So she says, I understand how hard it is to watch people you love struggle, but lack of autonomy is how we ended up with legislation like the Alberta Sterilization Act. We must offer treatment without pathologizing homelessness. We must take care of people in community without hiding them away. Who decides who is addicted enough or disabled enough to be sent away? How will institutions like this impact working class people over affluent community members with the same struggles as a wider support network? What will keep policing institutions from weaponizing referrals? What about religious accommodations for those who don't view their mental health struggle as an illness? If someone refuses treatment, will they be forced to receive treatment? If someone prefers one treatment over another, will their voice matter? What rights do families have? Again, these are all things that, David Eby just wants to rush into this without accounting for all of these questions. He just wants to get this done as quickly as possible so they don't see how much of a horrid decision this is. Because if he were to try to answer any of these questions, it would show him for the ass he is. She continues, overall, I'm not convinced that this is the way of approaching mental health or addictions in community. Overall, I'm not convinced that this way of approaching mental health or addictions in community is the way forward. As the cost of living crisis has worsened, so too have the conditions of our most vulnerable community members. The solution is to fund treatment and housing options. This is known. We know how to solve this problem. We just have a lack of political will. Yeah, this isn't rocket science, nothing. We know how to get this done. Now, I also just wanted to quickly go over a couple of news videos about what's happening here in Ontario that's tied to this, because Like again, here you have the Conservatives in Ontario shutting down supervised consumption sites, and now you have the NDP in BC going to force people with addictions into treatment centers. Now, Ontario has talked about these heart hubs that they will prefer people go into as opposed to supervised consumption sites. So how long is it before in Ontario people are forced into these heart hubs for treatment? And again, who profits from that? Is it the government? Who profits from housing these people? What good does it do to take somebody, completely away from their supports, their family, their network, and throw them into a location far away from all of that to force them into some sort of treatment where the evidence shows this type of treatment does not work? What good will come from any of this? So this is from City News. Kensington Market rally to save supervised consumption site from closing. Again, these supervised consumption sites were in areas that were in need of them, because the government, Doug Ford, and in other provinces, they like to say, well, they draw in the crime and all this sort of stuff. It's like, no, they go to the areas where there is a need for a supervised consumption site. It's not the other way around.
Dozens of people coming together in Kensington Market today outside a supervised consumption site, one of the ones that the Ford government announced would be shut down last month. It's happening in a community unlike others in the city where some say it's supported.
We save lives! We save lives!
People that can't help themselves. That's what we're here for, to help each other.
The voices were varied. Clients, supporters, community organizations, and politicians all trying to make the case that providing a safe space for drug use saves lives.
And again, Doug Ford was saying, it's like, oh yeah, this is what the cities want, this is what the communities want, and blah, blah, blah. And he was just lying. Because here you have the community wants it there. The consumption site in my area, people want it. They want that service. He wasn't doing what the cities want. He was doing what he wants. Meanwhile, alcohol is now available at convenience stores across the street from a school. Like Felicia was saying, it's like we choose which things are okay, substances are okay and not okay. And it's almost very arbitrary on, which ones are legal, and we can celebrate it because we celebrate drinking alcohol so much. That's such a great thing to do, celebrate it. Like, look, you can get all these booze now, it's great, woo. But, any other substance, oh no, you can't do that. Even substances that are far less harmful than alcohol are demonized and criminalized.
Kensington is one of 5 Toronto sites set to be shut down after the Ford government's decision to close facilities close to schools and childcare centres by the end of March next year.
When you don't have supervised consumption, you have unsupervised consumption. And living in an alleyway, I know where they'll go. Seeing the park, we know where they'll go. The conversation around public bathrooms, we know where they'll go.
Inside the centre, a room set aside with a few tables and support staff that's existed now for 6 years inside a larger community hub. Those in charge say they were taken back by the decision, believing they have provided more help than harm.
We were hoping there'd be an announcement to talk about how there could be more sites, bigger sites, more hours of care and support. But the opposite happened, and they're cutting the services in Toronto drastically and dramatically.
Again this week, the Premier defended the province's actions.
We've seen over and over again since the safe consumption sites have come in, it hasn't gotten better. It's gotten worse, a lot worse.
A spokesperson.
You see right there? He was lying. That was a lie. You see, this is not me calling him a name. And this is me describing his behavior. That was a lie. Okay? There has been no reported overdoses, deaths in supervised consumption sites in Canada. They save lives. People, like the tragic story I covered last week of a child who overdosed in a tent alone. Whereas if she had been in a supervised consumption site, she most likely would still be here. They save lives long enough for those people to get into a place where they can go for help, where they're ready for help. And again, so many people want the help, but there's no voluntary treatment centers available to them. So can we please focus on those first?
A lot worse.
A spokesperson for Health Minister Sylvia Jones told City News that, quote, communities, parents, and families across Ontario have made it clear that the presence of drug consumption sites near schools and daycares is leading to serious safety problems. We agree.
We save lives!
The province will spend $380 million to create addiction recovery hubs, while the opposition continues to try and make the case to keep sites like the one in Kensington open.
We are going to use every tool we have to make sure that we're making decisions based on evidence, because we need to solve our opioid addiction crisis by meeting people where they're at.
At the same time, there are a number of business owners who did approach us, chose not to be on camera, saying that they have been harassed at different times and actually agree with the government's decision.
Again, they've been harassed at different times. By who? Can you connect it directly to the supervised consumption site? Or is it just, again, the supervised consumption site went to an area that already had issues and problems and stuff? So these business owners who've been harassed, by who? Was it anyone to do with the consumption sites, or are you just using them as a scapegoat? And I also wanted to go over some of this from CBC News. Ontario faith leaders urge province to change decision to close safe consumption sites. You see, you know it's bad when mainstream media is pointing out how much of a terrible idea this is. Because normally they'd be right on board for government policy and eugenics and all that sort of stuff. But when they start pointing out more and more that this is a bad idea, you know, it's a bad idea.
Leaders from across Ontario are urging the province to reverse a contentious policy. They want Doug Ford's government to cancel its decision to close 10 of the province's 17 overdose prevention sites. The plan is set to take effect by next spring. The CBC's Megan Fitzpatrick was listening to the news conference. So Megan, what did we hear?
Well, they did hold this news conference, Andrew, and they've also sent a letter to Premier Doug Ford that they say more than 200 faith leaders have signed. And that letter, and at their news conference, they're urging the Premier to reverse his decision. It was a few weeks ago that the government...
So you can have these 200 faith leaders send a letter, but Doug Ford will say, well, I talked to like 3 business owners who were upset about this. It's pretty much how it would go. You know, who does Doug Ford prioritize when it comes to their concerns? It's the business people, you know. That's who matters to him.
Government announced new regulations that they intend to bring in having to do with supervised consumption sites. The rules will say that they can't operate within 200 meters of a school or daycare. And that...
But you can now sell alcohol right across the street from them.
Effectively will mean that 10 of the province's current sites will be forced to close down by March 31st of next year. 5 of those sites are here in the city of Toronto. The other ones are located in Hamilton, Guelph, Kitchener, Ottawa, and Thunder Bay. 9 of the 10 sites are provincially funded. And the Premier and Health Minister Sylvia Jones have defended this decision.
Now keep in mind, she just said that 9 of them are provincially funded, but whenever you see Pierre Poilievre talk about the drug dens, he'll say they're the Justin Trudeau funded drug dens. So again, Pierre Poilievre is a liar. He lies.
They feel like these sites aren't working. They have cited hearing concerns from community members around drug equipment being found in public places. They say that people are worried about the safety of their children near these sites, and they cite crime concerns related to these sites as well. Instead, the government intends to fund what they...
So you're talking about concerns and feelings over the fact that these sites have saved lives, but people nearby might be a little uncomfortable with it. They have concerns. They have feelings. You know, those have to be the priorities. You know, you have to prioritize these feelings over the actual facts of how much lives these sites save.
They call heart hubs, which are homelessness and addiction recovery treatment hubs. Now, the leaders today...
And how long before people are forced to go to those?
Andrew, we're saying that closing these sites amounts to giving people death sentences, people who use these sites. These faith leaders saying these sites do save lives, they prevent overdoses, that there's a toxic drug supply crisis going on, and these sites are needed to help people and to save lives. Sylvia Jones has said that people will not die as a result of closing these centers. The faith leaders today...
They absolutely will. People will absolutely die because of the closures.
Rejected that notion, saying she's living in a fantasy if she believes that. At that news conference, there was a woman who has depended on one of these sites here in Toronto, and she talked about how vital it was to her. Here's a bit of what she said.
They don't hand out drugs. They're handing out the equipment, so it's going to be safe to do the drugs and be there if something were to happen. Someone is going to die or like go under, how they say it. But it's...
And again, when Pierre Poilievre gets into his lies, he'll say, you know, the hard drugs that Justin Trudeau just hands out and all this sort of stuff, and that we need to make them illegal. But the thing is that hard drugs are already illegal and they're not being handed out. You know, Justin Trudeau isn't, you know, you don't go trick-or-treating at his door and get drugs thrown into your bag or anything of that sort. These centers don't have the drugs there to give to people. No, those are all lies from Pierre Poilievre to demonize what these sites are, to strike fear into the hearts of the average person who maybe isn't as informed on what happens. But, you know, the people find the drugs on their own, and then they go to these sites where they can at least have less harm with clean needles, clean pipes, maybe test the drugs to make sure that they're not spiked.
A lot more there. There's counseling, there's support, there's it's people you're surrounded by that understand and care and don't judge you. It's a great place. Closing it down is going to kill a lot of people. Are going to die. It's going to be a crisis. There's going to be a lot of dead people. A lot.
She shared that she has struggled with drug addiction for more than 30 years, but she has now been clean for 2 years. She told the news conference she wasn't sure she would be alive today if it wasn't for the help and support she got at that center here in Toronto. She also...
There's so many stories like that. People who are alive today because of supervised consumption sites. They have saved so many lives until eventually a person gets to a place where they're able to get the help that they need, where they're ready to get the help that they need. You know, sometimes it is just about making it from one day to the next in hopes that one of those days something will change and you can finally get the help that you need.
Warned again that she feels like there will be deaths because of the closure of these sites. She also warned there will be more public drug use once these sites close. The faith leaders and that client of that site as well, saying that closing these sites will not push people into recovery, and they say if that's the government's intention, it's not going to work. They said quite the opposite. It will drive people away from recovery. So they are hoping to convince Premier Doug Ford to change his mind. Andrew, they are appealing to the public to help put pressure on the government to reverse course, and again, appealing to him to change his mind. But he has been quite strong in his defense of this decision.
Megan, thank you. The CBC's
am very passionate about this subject, but, you know, I've never had to deal with addiction. I've known some people who have, but usually after, you know, once they've become sober. But I can empathize. You know, I can relate with my struggles with mental health issues and how difficult it is for me to get treatment and the help that I need. And with some of my darker thoughts related to my mental health issues and how, you know, I can relate because, you know, they run the risk of overdosing. I run the risk of unaliving. And sometimes it is just about making it until the next day, until the next day, until the next day, until something in my situation changes that it can pull me out of these thoughts. And I see that a lot with other people with mental health issues, that they just get pushed so far. And, you know, one day they finally snap because just a little bit too much was pushed in their direction. Whereas if they had gotten the help that they needed that one day, then maybe the next day they would find what it is that they need to totally get themselves out of that situation. Because the thing with mental health issues, and I imagine it's very similar to addiction issues, is that there is no one fix. You can't throw me in one program and have my brain fixed. It doesn't work like that. I've had to go through different groups, different counseling, different techniques, different medications. And then someday it just, I heard something else and then I was able to relate it to other things from my past and it just snaps and I understand certain things. And without all of those treatments that failed, I wouldn't have made it to the one that worked. And those ones that failed didn't actually fail. They planted seeds that could later grow. So without those failed treatments, I wouldn't have found one that worked. Or when I came across that one that worked, it might not have, had I not been through all the other programs I had already been through. There is no one fix. You can't just throw me into an institute and expect me to come out okay. That's not how it works. What I need is, like, when I need help, I need to be able to just go out and get the type of help that I need versus making it to the point where I don't want to say anything because I don't want to be taken away from my home, from my cats, to be forced into some sort of institute, to be forced to be around people that I don't know and don't like. That will definitely not help my mental health. But like, that's the thing. I don't have these issues, but I can still empathize with the people who do. And I see what the government is doing to them and how disposable the government views these people. And it's devastating that so often in this government, some lives matter and some don't. But then they'll turn around and try to paint it, oh, we're so inclusive. We value everyone. No, they don't. They don't. Not all lives matter, according to our government. Only some lives do. And it's the lives that benefit their bottom line that tend to be the ones that matter. Anyway, why don't I check the Sandbox and then we can unwind and stuff, because those are the stories I wanted to get to. I'm not sure when I'll be able to clip these. Like, I run into the problem where, you know, especially the story about Jagmeet Singh and the confrontation he had, like, if I could clip that out and get it out tonight, then it would probably do a lot better than when I get it out next week and the story has died in the clicks and stuff of that sort. But I have some other things on the go right now that I need to focus on, so I probably won't get around to clipping this. And just ADHD type stuff, so it's, yeah. Oh, let's see. And if you can, please support my channel through, Is it this one? Yeah, through becoming a patron, because this video will be demonetized. Just given the content that I've been talking about. And I really wish sometimes when I get that notice that a video has been demonetized, that they at least tell me what part it was that caused it to be demonetized so I can get a better feel for that sort of thing. But no. It could be a minute worth of content in a 4-hour long video and the entire video will be demonetized. But I showed a lot of videos on here and I get nervous showing the videos, but I think it's probably more interesting to watch than me reading a bunch of articles. But it's so hard to tell which ones I'll get hit up on. So please, if you can, become a patron. That's the best way to support my channel consistently, so that I don't have to worry so much about that sort of thing. Let's see. I think I scrolled up way too high, but then found comments that I hadn't caught. Soul Life saying, I thought Canada was the polite country, but they say sorry after using the N-word. Canada is a very racist country. Very, very racist country. So let's scroll back down to closer to where we were. Okay, that's more stuff about the pagers. BKK, thank you, Sandy. I never knew the emphasis on the wrong syllable. Yes, we're talking about you, Shemagli. I had the break in the syllable in the wrong letter. Judah is saying, can we talk about Pierre Poilievre trying to speak in a calm and low tone of voice just to troll Trudeau? It comes off as really affected. Pierre is just the most uncharismatic person possible. Like, it is just... But, you know, he's doing well in the polls because people aren't voting for him. They're voting for, you know, the right-wing policies that he represents, that he'll prop up. Because, as I've said before plenty of times, you're not voting in Pierre Poilievre. You're voting in right-wing rhetoric. Because that's all he is. He's just an avatar to the right-wing rhetoric that is out there. And so you're not voting in him. You're voting in Diagolon. You're voting in the racist people that you saw attacking Jagmeet Singh, going to those parties. You know, the Freedom Convoy. Those are the people you're voting in if you vote for Pierre Poilievre. Crotchety, I need to make sure I'm signed up for BC NDP membership so I can vote for a new leader. F this guy, honestly. Yeah, and I posted a video in one of the videos I clipped when I was talking about the last NDP MP premier for BC, John Horgan, who I had severe issues with as well. But also keep in mind that sometimes it's not just as simple as having a membership to the party, depending on how they do that. So you need to find out ahead of time, because it might be only if you're at the convention. So I know that that's the case when it comes to voting for a leadership race, that vote was done at the convention. So you had to be there in person in order to vote for that. But when it comes to voting for the actual leader, it might be expanded out to whoever has a membership. But you might want to check that first so you're not wasting your money. But you know, I would look at it too, like if you just had to be a member in order to vote, then I would probably get a membership to the federal NDP and provincial NDP so I could vote for a far better candidate than that's currently in. And then cancel it right away after. Because I'm still getting calls despite everything the NDP has put me through. I still get calls from them wanting money. Crotchety, I'm in BC too. Freaking David Eby shut down safe injection sites too. He also rolled back decriminalization of drug consumption in public spaces. He's pulling to the right wing without evidence. Yeah. Crotchety, Eby thinks he can win on culture war stuff too. Conservatives want to take away free contraception. BC NDP will make first IVF treatment free for couples. Yay. I like it, but if I see your other crap, I might have read that wrong. So Life, I was going to say if they offered a free but not forced option, that it itself would be great. Most people don't have money for that, and if they do, it's usually a long wait to get in. And we have that problem here too, that there are treatment centers that are available on a more timely fashion, but you need a lot of money in order to go to them because they're privately run. And those that are publicly funded, the wait list is longer than you have. You know, you don't have that time to wait. And it's the same trying to get mental health treatment. It's like, oh, so you're suicidal today. Okay, well, we have this program you can go into. It's only a year. Can you wait that long? No. Crotchety, Ken Sim, mayor of Vancouver, BC, is all vibe and anecdotes. He heard from a friend or he knew a kid when he was younger that had it happen to him, and common sense, just all the vague right-wing BS. And I'm pretty sure common sense is just an oxymoron at this point. Whenever I've heard it, it's coming from conservatives or people that are doing anything but common sense. Like, it probably needs to be switched in the dictionary what it actually means. It's like, it's not common sense anymore. It's more, this is the sense we want to force upon other people. So life recovery is hard with housing. I can't imagine being in withdrawal on the streets. I could see myself criming. Housing first. Alex Zoot? I don't think I've seen you in the Sandbox before. Welcome. The mandates to help people already were made to push them out and not give care. Let's see. And Alex Zoot says again, this makes it so I would not want to seek help for the sake of being dragged in somewhere. I can't imagine it happening to any others. And that's been pointed out by a lot of people, just saying that this discourages people from seeking help. Crotchety, here's the test. How many wealthy sons and daughters are going to be committed to involuntary care under these new rules? Yes, indeed. I think we all know the answer to that one. Hello, Vicky Clee. Thank you for stopping by. Crouchity saying, looks like I am a BC NDP member. I'm going to tell my local MLA I support a leadership change. Mm-hmm. Oh, person who's new to the Sandbox that I'm pretty sure I'm messing up part of your name, Zoot, says, thank you so much, Sandy. I came across you through Lance. Well, thank you for coming out. I appreciate it. I am the spot for Canadian content almost exclusively, except for every now and then when I talk about TYT, and my numbers suddenly then shoot through the roof. I don't go out of my way to talk about TYT. In case you don't know, I used to be a contributor to Rebel HQ, and there's a story behind that. I have videos on it. So every now and then I kind of feel obligated to talk about some of the turns that they're making in their rhetoric. And those videos tend to do really well, which is kind of frustrating because I would love my videos on Doug Ford to like blow up and get thousands and thousands of views. My videos on Pierre Poilievre tend to get a lot more views than normal, but that's because trolls are watching it. They're being hate watched, and I welcome it. But yeah, the vast majority of my content is Canadian politics, eh? Cratchity, and thank you, Sandy, for advice about participating in party leadership votes and how I should check that first. Yes. Because it all depends on the convention. It depends on the party. It's because there's no standard for getting a party leader in. So let's say Justin Trudeau were to step down right now. There's not a leadership race. What would happen is the caucus would appoint a new leader. And then maybe closer to the election, they would have a more official leadership race. But in the interim, they would just appoint someone. And it depends on, again, it depends on the party and their structure as to who, because it's also, if there's a hint of a party leadership race, you might want to get your membership sooner than later because they have cutoffs as well. So if you get your membership after a certain time, you won't be able to vote. Because they did that when I was trying to become a candidate. Whereas 30 days before the meeting, no new members within that 30 days could actually vote at the meeting for the vote, because they want to make sure the check clears. They don't want people signing up and then immediately stopping payment before the check clears. Let's see. Crouchity, yeah, Canadian politics mostly just get conservative trolls. The Global News YouTube channel and Facebook page is a cesspool of right-wing hate watch trolls. Yeah. It helps in the algorithm, so I'll take it. You know, I don't read those comments. Every now and then, I will glance through the notification from the comments, and if I recognize a name, I'll read that comment, but other than that, I don't read a lot of them. Because like the thing is that they're not even being sincere in their criticism. You know, they're not having a sincere take on what I'm saying or like a legitimate feeling. It's just, no, I'm going to hate on it for the sake of hating on it because you're on the left, or they're quick to point out the queer flags I have in the background, and that tells them all they need to know about me. So it's not even like a legitimate criticism or feedback that they want to give me. So what's the point of me watching it, you know, or reading their comments? So I try to scan through comments to see ones from people I know, which is unfortunate because then I probably am missing comments of like legitimate criticism or constructive criticism, I should say, or people who just want to show their appreciation. I'll miss a lot of that because of the amount of right-wing BS that tends to fill up the comment section. But even then, the comments I get, they're bad, but they're not that bad, considering the gender I present, and the fact that I have all these queer flags in the background. So Alex Zoot, I love your content and appreciate it. I'm a queer person who is also a person with disability, and what you cover is invaluable. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I hope you have hit subscribe. Yes, I'm a queer NB living with disabilities. And you don't see too much content from that perspective. So it's good to have out there. But how about we unwind a little bit? I promised it, or mentioned that I would do it near the beginning. Why don't we see another clip from the show? So, yes, I'm a big fan of the Majority Report. Oh, I wish so much I could go to the live show in Brooklyn for the election night, but there's, like, other than the fact I can't afford it, I'm not entirely sure I want to be stateside election night just because, you know, I like the safety of being in Canada for that. So, yeah, but because it's not just about going to see the show, it's also meeting up with like a whole bunch of other people within the Majority Report community that I kind of peripherally know. Like, I would love to be able to actually meet Letterhack. We've talked online, we've done collaborations, but it'd be nice to actually like go to dinner with a whole bunch of Majority Report people, audience members that I know, you know, through online messaging or channel stuff. Like, I would love to meet some of the people, just hang out with like-minded people, and then come election night to either commiserate or celebrate. But yeah, I don't have the money to travel down there for that. Like, I could probably afford the travel as in driving down, but it's the hotel rooms that are the real. I'm not going to spend a rent's worth of money for one night or 2 nights in a hotel, because I can't. So, speaking of, you know, segueing back into it, Sam has talked about a sitcom he was in the mid-90s called The Show, which is virtually impossible to Google without finding a bazillion different things, because pretty much any TV show with the word show in it will pop up. So you have to narrow down your search and stuff, and I can get a little hyper-focused on it from time to time because I'm very curious about it. But I haven't been able to find it. But then recently, after not thinking about it for months, I tried a different search term in YouTube, and I found a full episode of the show. So it's the first episode, not the pilot. So there's the pilot, then the first episode, and this is the first episode that I found on YouTube. The quality is horrid. But it's very interesting to see a very young Sam Cedar in this. Let's see, where's in there? I've watched the whole thing. Let's maybe go back to, let's watch him on a phone. How about that?
I'll be in my dressing room if y'all need me. Hello?
Look at that phone.
Hey, Wilson. Yeah, of course I watched the show. Yes, you certainly did. Sock it too, Angela Lansbury. Now? No, Wilson. Now actually would not be a good time to come over and talk. No. But, well, Allison and I are just about to go to bed. Really, Wilson, is there any way that maybe we could do this about tomorrow or something?
Yeah, tomorrow's good for me, Tommy. What's that?
You see, for those of you who don't know, the reason why that is funny is because he was using a cell phone and could talk when he was just outside the door versus the phone that Sam's character was using that has a range of the living room. It wasn't a real cell phone. It was a landline portable phone. Whereas he was using an actual cell phone. Trying to explain the way things were to the youth of today.
I mean, Allison.
Nothing.
I always call before I drop by. My mama taught me that. The last decent woman on the planet. Oh, here you go, Tom. Bottle of Cristal champagne. The best. $200. Oh, and here's another 100 in cash.
What's this for?
I ran up on your tulips again, man. Now, can we get to dealing with my problems, please?
Wilson, I feel for you, man. And I'll do anything I can to help you during the day.
I ain't trying to talk to you, Tom. I'm trying to talk to Allison.
Allison?
Yeah, I would have told you that, but once again, you went off like a hothead. What's up with you, man? Pulling guns at work? You need to think about taking some yoga or some Tai Chi or something. Now, why don't you go pour some champagne while me and A-Dog grab it?
A-Dog? Listen, Wilson, you can't come in here and impose a...
Could you make mine a mimosa?
Sure. Yeah, two of them. Mimosa? Yeah, all right.
So, Wilson, what's up?
It's like this, eh? My girlfriend left me. I can't eat, I can't sleep. It's affecting my work.
Not that I don't appreciate your confidence, but, why are you telling me this?
It's because I can't talk to my sisters or my mom. They think she just on me for my money. And I definitely can't talk to my crew. I trained them to disdain sensitivity. Now it's come back to bite me in the ass. I just miss her. I mean, I don't want to be one of those messed up stars jumping from woman to woman. I want a woman who's the real deal. And I had her. Now she's gone.
Well, how was your relationship? I mean, did the two of you talk?
Oh, all the time. Okay. I was always paging her, calling her on the cell phone I bought her. I always had my eye on DeAndre.
Wait, what, you couldn't find one of those electronic house arrest bracelets in her size?
Ouch.
Wilson, you're not treating her like a girlfriend. You're treating her like an object. You know, I'm surprised she never said anything before.
Well, I guess she may have thrown a couple of hints. I mean, she was always saying stuff like, you treat me like an object. But, you know, I thought that was just woman talk. You know how you chicks always going on about stuff. It's like y'all get paid by the word.
Wilson, you need to talk with her. I mean, really talk with her.
Damn, she said that too.
Tom does the same thing. You know, every once in a while, I would love it if he would come home and ask me about my day before going on about his.
Yeah, Tom plays you like that?
Sometimes. But he makes up for it. With that little thing he does with my toes. Anyway, listen. I'm gonna let you in on a little secret about women.
All right.
The key to a woman's heart is that just every...
Sorry, I need to show you Frodo. He's my sick old kitty. He's 17. And he decided to come say hi. Say hi to everyone. Say hi. Yeah, you're like, why are you holding me? Ah, there we go. That cat is my world.
Every once in a while, make her know that she is the most important part of your life.
Sorry it took so long. I slipped on the champagne, and when I tried to get up, I bumped my head. I think I blacked out for a couple of minutes.
I. It's always about you, ain't it, Tommy Tom?
Enough of that. Ah. Yes, Frodo is very cuddly kitty. So Life saying, oh my god, 17 might be a record. Yeah, he's amazing, but last year he nearly died, and I've never seen a cat kind of come through it and be so well afterwards. Like, he's not just doing okay, he's doing really well. And it's thanks to a lot of the support that I got from people back then with help with his vet bills. I do have ongoing vet bills, so if people could help out with that, that'd be great, because he has to be on medication that helps him to eat. But he plays with his brother. He still loves his snuggles and his cuddles, and I can still use like pet teasers with him, and he'll go for them. And yeah, he is my world, that cat. But you know, if people have a little extra money, the best way to help with that is, if you're Canadian, e-transfer to SandeeLovas@gmail.com, or use the PayPal link in the description box below, because every little bit helps with that guy, because I can't imagine my life without him. Anyway, yeah, I don't know, like, there might be a little bit of radio silence from me for the next little while, because I have a couple things that there's some deadlines that are coming up for the book that I wrote, that, again, I'm very conflicted as to when. It's part of a derby, so I'm not allowed to say what it is yet, not the genre or anything of that sort, because, you know, the idea behind the derby is to see how well people do from scratch without advertising to your networks. But then once the competition part is over, I can tell people what it is. I'm just, you know, the feedback that I got from the beta reader was just so bad that I'm worried people might think of me differently when they read it, because I was talking it up so much, because I absolutely love the book myself, and I love the world that I built and stuff. But, you know, I don't want people to be like, what is wrong with you? This book is shit. So I'm a little conflicted, because it's easy enough for people to say, oh, I'll read it. But it's like, no, you don't know the genre even. And unless you're a fan of the genre, you probably shouldn't read it. You know, like, you have to actually be interested in what this book has to offer. Don't just read it for the sake of reading. You can buy it for the sake of buying it to help me, but I wouldn't want people to invest in reading a book unless it's a book that actually appeals to you. But yeah, I need to do the one last read through before it gets posted under the fake author name. But yeah, so I'll be busy with that. There's some other things that I have to take care of, like, now. And with ADHD, that usually ends up happening where it's like, oh, this is fine, this is fine. Oh, I need to do it right now. But yeah, just checking the Sandbox BKK. Frodo is beautiful. What a soft, sweet, fluffy boy he is. And at night and in the morning, we do bedtime snuggles where I actually get to spoon him. Like, he'll just snuggle right in beside me, and I get to rub his belly, and he'll be having his head right up in there, wanting all his attention. You know, waking up to have him there, or just going to bed, if I feel like crap going to bed, just having that snuggle with him helps so much. That cat has helped me so much. But I got him his siblings. It's been just over a year now that I've had those two. And it's so great. Like, in the morning, because he sleeps in the bedroom with me at night, away from the other two, so that he has time to eat his food overnight. Otherwise, Lanier would just gobble all of it down, and Frodo's a bit more of a grazer. And so it's just me and him in the bedroom overnight. So then in the morning when I let him out, they have their own routine too, of like saying good morning almost to each other and stuff. And then Frodo and Lanier will usually end up tussling around a bit, and it's so good. I love them so much. So other than that, I don't think there's much else to go over other than this stuff. Oh, right. Some of the other things that are going to keep me occupied for the next little while are some drawings I want to work on. Get that done. And yeah, so I have a lot on the go. And I wasn't necessarily planning on doing a live stream today. It's just that so much kind of hit the news right away. And it's hard because I don't want to wait too long, because like here I am, it's already been 3.5 hours, and I was hoping to just keep it down to 2. But the way that the news just kind of suddenly overloads you, and I want to talk about these things, and I feel like I have a good perspective to add. So my hair is really frizzy. I didn't put that much product into it. Frizzy hair, frizzy hair. So, suppose I can just let you guys go. I don't know if there's somebody else I can toss you over to. I know later on tonight there's probably going to be left past 10. Yes, please like the video if you can. It helps. Share. Let other people know in other leftist chats that I exist, and try to scooch them over here for Canadian content. And it's not just like, it's not just about Canadian politics, because, Canadians pay a lot of attention to American politics because there's a lot of crossover in the issues. And so even though I'm talking about, these supervised consumption sites, well, those are issues down in the States too. It's not like it's exclusive to us. So even though they're Canadian centric, it should still have cross-border appeal, I would think. Just given that these are issues that we share. We have the same issues with right-wingers as Americans do. It's just different names up here, different party names, different names of politicians, but it's the same cultural issues that we're dealing with. It's the same issues of corporations owning our politicians, of capitalism and all that sort of stuff, of, this being a colonial state. Like, it's all the same issues. So if you ever get sick of, hearing about American politicians, you can just, listen to Canadian politicians and we'll cover the same issues. But, I also understand that a lot of people who watch my channel are usually in the same situation that I am and don't have that much to spare financially, which I totally understand. But ways that you can help is just by commenting under the videos. Don't bother reading the troll comments. Don't put yourself through that. Commenting under the videos. I have videos that I've clipped on my channel that I would very much like to get them over 100 views to help in the algorithms and stuff. So even if you do courtesy watches where you click on it, you mute it, and you do something else, that would be appreciated. And if you do that daily with me, because I'm doing that daily, to get them over that 100 view mark, that would be really appreciated. And let other leftist content creators know that I would like to collaborate, because I would. It takes a lot of pressure off of me. And yeah, all these social media things here. New Left of the Box for Blue Sky and the Hostile Fart Sauna, as opposed to just the one that was my name of SandeeLovas. So please subscribe and follow those as well. Other than that, I think I can let everyone go. And it's been great. Oh, and thank you to all the mods for keeping the sandbox clean of turds, and for every one of you lovely people for coming out and watching. And a super special thanks to all the people who have signed up to become a patron, purchased something off of my Amazon wish list, which is linked in the description box below, who have sent, one-time donations towards photos, vet bills and stuff. Like, I would not have made it this long doing this channel if it wasn't for that support. So I super appreciate it. Anyway, until next time, whenever that is. This one. Salut, à la prochaine. Thank you for watching and stay tuned. I'm Sandy, wishing your tomorrow is better than your today.